Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Morning Show. I was trying to take those at the last minute. Welcome to the Jamal Thomas Show. My name is Jamal Thomas. I hope you guys are doing all right this morning. Or at the very least, if you're not on the East Coast, I hope you're doing all right today, that you had a fantastic night or a fantastic day. I'm being an internationalist, at the very least I'm trying to be. But I hope you guys are doing well. I am going to give a trigger warning. What I mean by that is, if you are squeamish, if you are bothered by issues of people getting maimed, injured, killed, etc., this will be your time to exit and come back within 5 minutes. Otherwise, I am going to drink some damn good coffee, and I would like to have a conversation about what seems to be something very strange taking place that nobody is talking about. So I will talk about it. The effectiveness of the resistance seems to have increased, and increase markedly so. I mean that in the context of Ansar Allah, and I mean that in the context of, you could say, Hamas, or let's say the fighters who are left on the ground in the rubble in Gaza. It is very strange to me. Every random blue moon, you will see an Israeli get killed, but that is not what is taking place right now. You're seeing mass casualty events. And by mass casualty, I mean Hamas, whatever the groups are, killing a lot of Israelis at once, day after day after day. They seem to have gotten far more effective at doing so. Now, I don't know if that's a degradation of Israel. I don't know if that's an attrition warfare, where despite the fact that they have 2 years, nuclear weapons, all of the money, billions of dollars from the United States, that over time they've gotten weaker, their equipment have gotten weaker, and their capabilities have gotten weaker. And let's be very honest, the 12-day war, Israel has never been straightforward about the level of damage that it took from that war. And it is very possible that the damage that it took made it lame on some level. And I mean lame in the sense of its capabilities in Gaza. And it is just not telling. And whether it tells or not, it still may show. It's kind of like an athlete with an injury. It's like, okay, you don't have to tell me that you're injured, but if you take an extra minute to run when something that you could have run a minute faster prior, then I'm going to ask you, are you okay? Hey, bro, you okay? It's that. It seems that their capability of dealing with Hamas has been diminished. And in it being diminished, Hamas's capability of inflicting losses on Israel has increased. And again, I put this to Ansar Allah. Also, the reason, and some people, again, people get me wrong when I'm in these interviews or these conversations. I kept asking KJ about China's, let's say, role in dealing with Ansar Allah, because I was somewhat enamored by the fact that the Chinese are doing somewhat of a wink and a nod. They have hardware in that region in battleships. And these battleships are communication platforms. And you have to wonder, why are you in the Red Sea off the coast of Yemen? And who are you communicating to? And is it a coincidence that Ansar Allah's capability of hitting their targets has markedly increased while the Chinese warship is there? Now, I think KJ would say with a wink and a nod, yes, in which case I was trying to nail it down that much further, which is why I kept pushing that point. This took place right here. This was either a day or so ago. Again, trigger warning. Trigger warning. As you know, Israel often bulldozes various areas, destroying homes. They have like battle bulldozers. Hamas puts out this video, and it's not Hamas. What's the name of the group? Okay, I'll go with Hamas. There was a different name for it, but whatever. And that guy dies. That guy gets gunned down. Whew, that's some hot, strong coffee. Some hot, strong coffee. I'm not going to show him get shot because I think YouTube may have some feelings about it, but you can take my word for it. he got popped. And he lays where he gets popped. And his weapons and everything that he has on him gets stolen by men with sandals, wearing sandals. Yep. That happened. That happened. That happened. Man, that's some strong coffee. That is some strong coffee. Here is a friend of his. Don't feel bad for that guy. Here's a friend of his. Listen to what the friend of his says. Effectively, the friend is saying he loved what he did. Every time he bulldozed a house, every time he took somebody's home, he came back saying effectively, there's going to be 1,000 people who are no longer coming back into Gaza. So don't feel bad for that guy. The guy died what he loved doing, destroying people's lives and, of course, killing people. Here's another one of dancing Israelis. Israelis love to dance. They do, like camels. Camels love to dance, right? Well, this is her dancing before. And this is her missing a leg after. Well. Whew, Jesus, that's some good coffee. To make my point, they name 889 soldiers, 70 police officers that were killed. And if you dig into it, right here, July 8th, the IDF on Tuesday morning said 5 soldiers, most of them from Netza Yehud Battalion in Kiev brigades were killed with an explosive device in Bet Hun or Hinun, northern Gaza. If you go to another news post, this one is July 25th. 7 Israeli soldiers were killed in a single incident on Tuesday in Gaza, marking one of the deadliest days for Israeli army in its 21-month siege against Palestinians. My point is, this seems to be becoming more and more prevalent. It's very strange. And I guess for me, ask the question, why? What happened to this mighty Israeli military that seems to be taking far more casualties over the course of this last weeks after the 12-day war? And did the 12-day war have anything to do with their diminishment of capabilities in regards to, I suppose it's easy to murder people, kids and women. It's different when you are effectively dealing with ambushes and people who are effectively hunting you. It is strange. And it's a question that no one seems to be asking. So I'm going to ask it. Here's another one. I showed you the last time where Ansar Allah took down a carrier that was heading to Israel. Well, here's another situation where they take down another one. Eternity Sea bulk carrier. And of course, I always love the Allah Akbar thing. It's profound to me. It's like you're killing somebody or you're doing something pretty heavy and you're screaming, there is no God but Allah, in the process of doing it as you do these kind of Herculean acts. But in this case, they put a hole in this boat and that boat sinks. Let me see if they have a picture of them hitting it. Bam. Think of the military capability you would need to be able to hit a carrier in the middle of the ocean like that, or in this case, sea. It's pretty proficient, right? It's not random. It's not men in sandals. It's showing a military capability that belies what we have been told of what Ansar Allah is. My point is that this is happening with far more regularity than it was prior. And of course, that boat goes into Davy Jones' locker at some point in the video as it, well, I guess that's the whole, but eventually the boat gets sunk. My question, and I guess the question I'm asking is, what changed? What happened? Why are they now showing these capabilities? And does it have something to do with A, the 12-day war in the context of Iran, and B, China. For all of the talk of people saying that China is not getting involved, is that really true? If you remember, the United States had accused China of giving, let's say, intel to Ansarullah, and the U.S. was complaining about the fact that they were doing it. Now, this is a bit rich, considering the billions of dollars of money that the United States gives, the weapons that the United States gives, the political support that the United States gives to its genocidal colony, Israel. So it's a bit rich. The point that I'm making here is Iran showed amazing capability. And you have to wonder, how did Iran show that capability? Yes, I strongly believe that Iran has weapon systems on their own. But if you remember, Iran got rid of the main satellite system that they were using and started using what is called Beidou, China's satellite system. And in that satellite system, showing their military capability of hitting targets with dead accuracy, one of the things that we also found out was that they actually did hit the military base. They actually hit it. So if you remember, Donald Trump came out and said, nothing to see here, folks. We shot down all of the missiles. Well, not so much. We find out now this. This was a communication system that was there. This big ball of a thing. And if you can see in the satellite images, it's no longer there. Meaning Iran hit it. It blew it up. I'm pointing out the precision necessary in order to hit something in a full military base. It nailed it. It left a hole. That's amazing. That's amazing. I'm going to take the position that maybe China and Russia are not sitting on the sidelines. They just aren't engaging directly, especially China. I think when the U.S. attacked the military installations, or let's say the nuclear power facilities in Iran, it sparked something in China where it realized that its interests were under attack and under threat, and that it needed to get involved in a way to get across that A, this is unacceptable, and to B, find some way to push back without necessarily making their presence overt. Whether it's the satellite system that Iran is using, whether it's the information and the intel that Ansarullah is getting, or whether it's the weakness in the Israeli military as a result of those strikes from that war. I don't know what it is, but it seems like something is going on that nobody is really talking about. It is fascinating. I'm going to sit here and enjoy my coffee. Whew, that is some good coffee. I'm going to bring in my guests. We are joined with my man. I know it's late there, so I greatly appreciate you joining me this time of night. Tim Anderson. Tim Anderson, he is a writer, internationalist, academic, director of Center for Counter-Hegemonic Studies. Tim, man, how you doing today? You doing okay today?
Good, thanks, Jamal. Yeah, good to see you again.
So I got a question for you. Am I insane in this point that it seems like the military capabilities of Hamas, the capabilities of Ansarullah have gotten markedly more precise ever since the 12-day war? And I haven't necessarily heard it brought up in the news. I haven't even heard it brought up necessarily on other channels per se. But I'm bringing it up because I watch people get killed every day, whether it's in Gaza or whether it's Israeli soldiers, whether it's in Ukraine, whatever. And I've seen a marked uptick in the ambushes or the explosions or the attacks that are taking place in Gaza against the IDF. Am I insane in this? Give me your thoughts on this.
Okay, so you're talking about Palestinian resistance and also Yemen, which are, of course, linked. They do talk to each other, but I think that we're talking about a couple of different things here, really. And in relation to the 12-day war, you're talking about what sort of damage the Iranians did to the Israeli infrastructure.
Yes.
The Israelis have made some partial admissions on this. You pointed out that there was The Iranians had also hit the US base in Qatar, the Al Udeid base, which is the biggest US military base in the Arab world, basically,
Yes.
hosted by our Gulf friends in Qatar. Let's start with Gaza, because you're right, I think, to say that there's an upsurge in the effectiveness of the resistance in Gaza. What's this come from? Now, from the point of view of Hamas, and let's remember, Hamas is probably the lead group, but there's at least half a dozen Palestinian resistance groups in Gaza and broader Palestine. Hamas may be the biggest, but Palestine Islamic Jihad, their one Al-Quds brigades, and Fatah has two armed groups, Al-Asifa and Al-Aqsa Martyrs Brigade. So they've been active for all the time since October 2023. And then there's some smaller ones. There's a Popular Front, the socialist groups, militia, and a few smaller ones too. Now, when it comes to Hamas, we know that Hamas has recruited young people, replaced most of the 13 to 15,000 losses they've suffered over the last 2 years. And recently they've appointed a new set of field commanders. So they have good communications restored there. They have new field commanders, some of whom are experienced, with many young operatives, basically. But the attacks that were made recently in Shujaa and Beit Hanun, I think you mentioned Beit Hanun, were really carried out by Al-Qassam, the Hamas militia. And so they're better organized, they've got better intelligence. They've announced that they've got more precise intelligence, and they've been carried out more complex operations with snipers, with improvised explosive devices, which are, by the way, usually unexploded ordnance dropped on them by the Israelis, these very big US bombs, sometimes half-ton bombs. If they don't explode, they'll rig them up for improvised explosive devices there. And they've also been trying to capture some POWs, some of the Israelis too. I'm not sure whether they were successful, but they have killed a number recently in Shujaa and Beit Hanun, quite a number, and between killed and wounded, we're talking about something like 50 or 60 in those two places. So they've been quite successful operations, basically resisting the invaders there. So that's on the part of the Palestinian resistance. There's still capacity there, enormously courageous, enormously resilient, despite the huge reprisals against civilians in Gaza that we all know about, basically. That's been the major tool that the Israelis have had to try and intimidate any resistance by simply wiping out civilians. And they're doing it 50 to 100 a day. Including, of course, as we know, mowing down civilians who are queuing up to get food aid by this Gaza humanitarian force, which is a mercenary force, which pretends to be humanitarian, trying to fill the gap left by the exclusion of the UN UNRWA agency, which used to provide aid there, but in fact becoming part of the killing machine there. Now you turn to Yemen. Yemen, of course, has upped the ante to, the Yemenis have said for quite a long time that they don't need anyone's permission to intervene directly against the Israelis. They were bombed themselves by the Israelis, and they the ports have been bombed. The ports were bombed before I visited Yemen in February this year, but they bombed them again in Hodeidah port and the Ras Isa port at the north, which was getting fuel, and also the bulk grain carriers were coming into Hodeidah. So they bombed a lot of things that affect civilians in Yemen. The Israelis don't have very good intelligence on Yemeni military and where they place their things. They call them Houthi rebels, which is what I think you commented on this, that how are these people in sandals that are called rebels sending hypersonic missiles into occupied Palestine? Well, they're a revolutionary government. They're not rebels, basically. They have the capacity of a revolutionary government. They've controlled at least 75% of the populated areas of Yemen for the last 10 years, for the last 10 years, since 2015. So it's misleading that the Western media keeps calling them Houthi rebels. They have this capacity. They've developed themselves. Okay, they've got some ideas. They've got some technological ideas from Hezbollah, from Iran, but they're building those things. I've seen the models of them in Hodeidah Museum, for example, those the Palestine 2 missiles, which travels at 16 times the speed of sound. That helps explain why it's difficult for the defenses in Israel to knock down these types of missiles, and why they have the precise capacity to hit ships, as you pointed out. I think they've upped the ante with the ships recently because they had deterred a lot of shipping from going through, but there are some they call recalcitrants that keep going to try and supply the Israelis, and they've imposed a quarantine. They imposed a quarantine on genocide. They say we have this moral obligation according to our Quranic understanding, and also according to our legal understanding, that there is a convention that Yemen signed some time ago. They're called the Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide. And states that sign that don't need permission from anyone to intervene to prevent and punish the crime of genocide. That's why they're doing their operations in the Red Sea now. And when the British and the US went in to try and stop them, they gave up after they'd lost a few jets and lost a couple of dozen Reaper drones, and were basically chased out of the Red Sea. So the Yemenis have their own effective capacity there. They may be getting help, in finance and technology from Iran, but the missiles are made in Iran. One shop owner in Yemen, when I was trying to buy some clothes, said, "Listen, all the clothes here made are rubbish. The only good thing we make in Yemen are missiles," basically, because a lot of the clothes were made in China. That's why he was trying to deter me from buying Yemeni-made clothes at the time. So they do make these missiles that are proving very effective. And usually they've not been sinking boats, they've been deterring warships. The warships have got exhausted. I think what happened with the aircraft carriers, they got exhausted. They were on alert the whole time, even though none of the US or British warships were sunk, but they were harassed and they were eventually chased out of the Red Sea. And I think then Trump tried to declare victory and then retreated, basically, because it was costing him a lot of money and putting a lot of stress on the crews there. Up until recently, there hadn't been any merchant marine people killed, but apparently in the second boat there were a couple killed there. Normally, the Yemenis are helping evacuate these boats, but they found that the boat, the one that you're showing at the moment, I think they were saying it was recalcitrant. It was going in and supplying. It was a bulk carrier supplying the Israelis, and they'd warned them many times that this was not permitted. There was a quarantine, and they were breaching the quarantine. So I'm not sure of this ship or the other one that a few seamen were killed on, basically. But so Yemen has its own capacity there, and which is a little bit distinct from the resistance in Gaza. But of course, however courageous and persistent the resistance in Palestine is, it's insufficient in itself to inflict a crushing blow on the Israeli military. They've inflicted a lot of pain on the military, but they need their regional resistance partners like Iran and Yemen to help with finally delivering a crushing blow to this apartheid regime.
I'm curious. Thank you for that. Great breakdown. I really appreciate it. Did the 12-day war create weaknesses in the Israeli military that is allowing this new effectiveness? I had and I guess the two things. The reason why I connected all of these things together, because technically all of these things are together in a way, even though they're different in their own sphere. The war between Iran and Israel, obviously, that's one sphere. The war between, let's say, the resistance groups in Israel, that's another sphere, but both of those things are going after Israel. And from the standpoint of Ansar Allah, they're trying to prevent supplies from getting into Israel. So the reason I linked them was because all of those things were in relation to Israel, even though I agree with you, they're different spheres.
Good point. It's a good point, and I haven't heard anyone raising it before. It's a very good point, because we know, while the Israelis have tried to hide it, because everyone knows they've got very tough military censorship, and only these partial revelations recently have sort of admitted some things that they were forced to admit, because I think some of the British Telegraph and some other Anglo-American NGO had pointed out that there were at least these five bases hit. We know also the Haifa refinery was smashed. It's not back in operation yet. That was providing most of the fuel to the Israeli military. And there's some question going on in Israel at the moment about whether they can reopen the refinery after all this damage or move it somewhere else. So it may be that they've got some problems with fuel there, with fuel supply. We know that their communication centers were hit too. We don't know exactly, because the Israelis are very careful to hide it, what damage is done. But I think you've got a very good point that really they must be facing some weaknesses now with their infrastructure being hit, with their military bases, with their intelligence operations, with their Mossad being hit. There's a lot of their infrastructure that's been hit. We don't know exactly what this means. The Israelis themselves have pointed out, in relation to the attacks in Gaza, the deadly attacks in Gaza by the resistance, was that the soldiers were suffering heat and humidity. So maybe the European colonists are having some trouble with the climate in Gaza. Basically, that was their one excuse. But I think you're right. There's something more to it than that. There's been some serious weaknesses opened up with the military and its supply and its coordination, perhaps, because really, if the resistance in Gaza have improved their intelligence, it looks like the Israelis have gone downhill in that respect, basically. And that must have something to do with communications with supply and so on as well.
That's funny. When we used to play chess and the guy used to lose, he was like, oh, the wind got in my eye. The sun hit me in the moment that I was about to make my move. The idea that they have been starving people, they have nukes. They have all of this money from the US. They have all the weapon systems that they want in the world. And they're like, the heat. The heat was bothering me. It wasn't bothering the people who we were fighting, but it was bothering us. Okay.
They were getting sunburned, I think.
Yeah, right. So another thing that has come out has to do with plans for Gaza. And I want to know whether you think this is going to work. So they're going to build a concentration camp. They've already been using the food distribution areas as killing fields. But apparently Netanyahu, and Trump agrees with this. So anybody who's trying to say that there's some kind of disagreement between Trump and Netanyahu, nonsense. Trump himself came out saying he wanted to expel the people who were there. So right here, according to the plan, each Gazan entering the humanitarian zone will undergo inspection to ensure they're carrying no weapons and are not affiliated with Hamas. Consequently, those outside these zones will later be identified as Hamas terrorists, providing legal justification for their elimination. So anybody who is outside of the concentration camp can be murdered with a quote-unquote clear conscience, because by definition of them not volunteering to go into a concentration camp, they're obviously Hamas. This is what they're trying to sell. Now, I don't know why they have to sell anything. They've been on a murder spree for the last several years. And, the death toll easily is over 100,000, if not more. Do you think this is going to work? I mean, they're talking about either killing or expelling 1.8 million people.
Look, you're right. Why do they need this pretext? They're still trying to wage some sort of soft power war. They lost their soft power with the genocide. We know that the world has turned against them, not just the global south. Most of the populations in the global north, most of the population in North America now, in the US also, has turned against them. They've lost that. Maybe they're trying to grab something back. But as you said, they've been killing civilians and boasting about killing civilians and children. They've been boasting about this for almost 2 years. This is, of course, the root of the genocide case in the International Court of Justice, that there's all these officials and ministers who've been boasting about their, Amalek, and they were going to wipe these people out because, I mean, it's true. All the Palestinians hate them. There's no doubt about that. And all the young kids are going to join the resistance groups. That's true, So in a sense, they're saying every child is a terrorist. It's self-fulfilling prophecy, isn't it? If you act as a Nazi, as they are, basically, and I think the parallel with the Nazis is a very good one. It's a very salutary one, really, because they should be ashamed. They should be ashamed with linked by the people that persecuted Jews in the past. This links us very close. You have a racial ideology. That racial ideology creates an apartheid system. It creates the rationale to eliminate people simply because they're part of this so-called racial group or terrorist group, they want to call it. Why do they need a rationale to say people are terrorists if they're outside a certain zone? They've been killing them in every zone there. And they pushed them down to the south, remember, in the past, to Rafah. Then the people went back to the north and they tried to bomb them in the north. They're still occupying Gaza. People think Gaza's been destroyed. No, actually, Gaza is still populated by these people. And I've seen this in other places, in Yarmouk, for example, in Syria, where when that was destroyed after a war with ISIS, people go back very quickly. They find shelter. They look for fresh water. People survive in these circumstances. These people are still surviving. Even if they're being starved, they're still looking to preserve their shelter, get access to fresh water, get access to food. This is still happening. It's not like there's no life there. The people in Gaza are still there, so trying to herd them into one other part of Gaza and put up a new fence around them, that already existed. That's what Gaza was. Gaza was set up as a type of concentration camp because most of those people, the families or their parents or grandparents, the parents and grandparents of the resistance fighters in Gaza came from what they call 48 Palestine, which they call Israel these days, or the Green Zone, where the first part that they colonized before they took over the whole of historic Palestine. So the Gaza concentration camp is going to be reduced. They keep talking about buffer zones. They talk about buffer zones in Lebanon, in Syria, in various parts of Palestine. There are members of the government that want to annex the whole of the West Bank, but the whole of the West Bank's been effectively annexed for the last 55 years or 57 years, whatever it is. So it's really not clear who they're trying to impress with these sorts of things. The population has been turned into a fascist population. 80% of them support what's going on in Gaza and want more of it to happen. But who are they trying to impress with this idea that people will be legal targets if they're outside some new fence post there? The whole of Palestine, I was there some years ago, it's not just like one wall that's separating the 48 Palestine from the rest. There are fences everywhere. All of the settlements across the West Bank have fences. They have fences around feeder roads. They have the place is like throttled by, it's like a briar patch, with all the thorns and everything, strangling the whole of Palestine. If you want to go from Ramallah to Bethlehem, Beit Laham, then you have to go a very, very long way. There's no direct route there. A lot of these places were accessible in the past, but all the fences and walls that the Israelis have built have really throttled it for everyone that's living there. And it's such a complex system of apartheid that even the Israeli officials don't actually know what the rules are in many cases. I'm talking about the West Bank now, but Gaza, to talk about a new set of walls and fences doesn't change much at all. They're trying to herd people into a certain area and mow them down or starve them. Basically, there's no sense in which they're going to treat people well within a concentration camp, which has more restricted walls. I'm not sure how the people are going to comply. They'll just bomb them more and deny them more aid. They're not allowing proper aid in at the moment. I don't know what the incentive is for people to go into these more restricted areas.
What's the end goal? And I know that's somewhat of maybe it's not as a wide question as I think it is when I asked it. But ultimately, what's the objective in this? I mean, it seems like either you're going to kill 1.8 million people, or you're going to somehow expel 1.8 million people. And up to this point, they have not indicated where they're going to expel them to. So you're stuck with killing 1.8 million people, which seems beyond Israel's capabilities.
Yeah, it's beyond
your take on that.
They're still getting killed by resistance, by young men in the resistance in Gaza. So really the capacity to erect new fences within fences is going to be constrained by the fact that the people putting up those fences are going to be shot too. It's like the feeder roads in the West Bank. You know that everyone in a fenced-off feeder road in the West Bank to a colony is an Israeli settler, and therefore they can snipe them at night. They'll snipe them in Gaza as they're trying to put up these new fences, basically. It's beyond their capacity, but they would like to expel them. It's what the Nazis wanted to do. The Nazis didn't start out wanting to kill all the Jews in Germany or in German-occupied Europe. They wanted to expel them, and one of the things they did was to help the Zionists expel Palestinian people, Jewish people to Palestine. They emitted some coins about that, the transfer agreement they called, the Havara agreement, to transfer money and people out of Germany. By the way, this was against the main Jewish organizations in Germany at the time, which wanted to boycott the Nazi regime. They knew they were anti-Jewish party. They knew they were in for trouble. But the initial years were all about trying to deport people, to move Jewish people out of Nazi-occupied Europe, basically. Now you have Netanyahu following in that model, talking about trying to deport people. He doesn't care where they go. He wants to find someone to host them. The same with Trump. In a sense, here's the other thing. We talk about Trump, but Trump has shown himself to be irrelevant to this situation. What has changed from Biden to Trump in what's going on in Gaza? Well, they called him Genocide Joe Biden. What has Trump done that's any different, really? Everything, Netanyahu, have everything you want. Here's some more weapons. Trump is still doing that. So he's become, he portrayed himself as an agent of change, but he's become irrelevant. The deep state in Washington is doing what it was doing under Biden, basically, and for that matter, in Ukraine too. What's changed there, basically, still weapons are going to Ukraine. So in Gaza, they would like them to go anywhere. There's great resistance from even the collaborating regimes, even Egypt, which has collaborated very closely with the Israelis and the US. Sisi doesn't want a huge Palestinian population in Egypt. It's going to be trouble for him, basically. It's going to create a great domestic problems for him there. Jordan has a lot. They don't want more. There's resistance from Jordan and from Egypt, which are the two compliant regimes, basically. We don't know about the Al-Qaeda boss in Damascus yet. Maybe he'll be more compliant, but it's a bit of a way from Gaza to to Syria at this moment. I don't see any Arab regimes that are keen to take a large number of Palestinian population. They know it's going to be trouble for them. It's going to be, the populations are very sympathetic. The Arab populations are very sympathetic to the Palestinian people, but the regimes themselves don't want it, that they can see more trouble. They've already got trouble. The Egyptian people are very pro-Palestinian, but they're not happy with the fact that Sisi's been collaborating so closely with the Israelis there. So there are ways in which, of course, from Egypt, some weapons have got into Gaza, because of those sympathetic networks, basically. But it's not easy to see where they might deport these people to. I think Trump has put out some feelers. Netanyahu has put out some feelers. Maybe they can deport some to parts of Europe, but it's not obvious. From the point of view of Netanyahu, it doesn't matter. He just wants them out, basically, so that they can colonize the areas, basically. And there's still an ongoing push, let's remember, in the West Bank. There is active acts of ethnic cleansing going on around Nablus. There's resistance in Nablus. There's resistance in Jenin, in Hebron, which is a heavily divided apartheid city. There are plans to try and annex more of Hebron too. So really, it's a generalized campaign. The Israelis seem to be still constrained in some way. Although they've lost their soft power, they seem to be still constrained to try and put up some sort of pretext for their supporters outside, those few that remain, to say, look, this is really all legit and the Palestinian people are going to be better off. And Trump is just echoing those sorts of messages. Trump doesn't seem to be taking an initiative. When someone asked him in Washington, when Netanyahu was there, he just flicked it to Netanyahu to answer it, basically. So he's not really even pretending to be someone who's taking a lead, although Netanyahu's saying the right things to try and placate Trump's enormous ego by saying, he's leading us and so on, but he's not really doing anything any different to what Biden was doing before him, basically.
Yeah, it's even worse because Trump is saying ludicrous things that make no sense. Like, for example, he would say, oh, the people in Gaza, they've suffered so much. They've suffered so much. And it's like, dude, you're paying 80% of a genocide. Like, meaning you're putting money, bombs, weapons. You were arguing in front of the ICJ that it was okay to starve 1.8 million people. That's pretty astonishing for you to then turn around and say, oh, they suffered so much. You were the cause of their suffering in real terms, right? I am also curious on something else. So can you explain, is Israel overextended? Let me start there first before I go to the next point, because I want to nail this part down before I move over into Lebanon. But is Israel overextended? I mean, they're in Syria, they're in Lebanon, they're in the West Bank, obviously. They've expanded into Gaza. They tried to attack Iran. That didn't necessarily go all that well. And so they seem to have doubled down in Lebanon. But it's a country of 8 million people. How are they pulling this off? And this is on top of an economy that seems to be non-existent if it's functioning at all.
Well, they're enormously propped up by their foreign support. Basically, the money and the weapons from the US, from Britain, from Germany. Let's remember, Germany is a major arms supplier to the Israelis too. So I think ever since October the 7th, 2023, they have been relying very heavily on this foreign support. They could not have sustained even what they're doing in Gaza if they had not had this enormous support. What is it, $4 billion a year from the US? And then on top of that, the new weapons supplies. I mean, they're stocking up on weapons now for the second round with Iran, it seems, which is going to come in a month or two, basically. But why they want a second round with Iran? What do you call a fighter who goes back into the second round having been smashed in the first?
Right there. Isn't it fascinating?
I don't think they were smashed. I think the Israelis that are fleeing to Cyprus, I think probably they think they were smashed, the ones that lost their homes and so on. But somehow, if you look at the Israeli media, they are claiming victory. They are saying, look, we hit Iran and we forced Trump to join in and hit them too for the first time. And look, they're saying, look, the Iranians were targeting civilians in Israel, even though they admit that 28 people were killed in Israel and 930 something were killed in Iran. They're still claiming that they had the targeted attacks and the Iranians were targeting residential areas. So some strange myth building going on amongst the minds, at least, of the Israeli elite and the Israeli media, to say we proved our technological superiority because we killed these Iranian commanders and we did this and that and the other thing. both sides, of course, are consolidating their assets at the moment. What you said before about China, I think, is true. China has been helping Iran with its missile program. That means components, and with their navigation systems, as you say, moving from the US GPS system across to the Chinese system, whose name escapes me. So they're getting, yeah. So, yeah. And there's a question of their air defenses and their fighter jets, because there were delays in getting the Russian ones, the Su-35s. They're apparently looking at getting the Chinese ones now. We don't know exactly what's happening there, but of course, Iran is consolidating its assets there. They have some very good, of course, missile technology of their own. Israeli side, of course, they're trying to replenish their military assets, and including their interception assets, because they're very expensive. Being US technology is more expensive than the rest of the technology in the world, than the Russian or the Iranian or the Chinese. Doesn't mean it's better, but it's very expensive. And so it looks impressive on paper, the Israeli military, I mean, but of course they're trying to stock up on all of those. You know, people have done these calculations. They've said every time an Iranian missile comes in, the Iranian missile costs them 100,000 or 200,000 or something, and the missiles sent up to interceptor cost $500,000 or $1 million or something like that. So it's sort of course, that doesn't matter too much, because most of the world is supporting the US economy by using the US dollar at the moment. Yeah. We know there's this artificial inflation of the dollar there, and effectively, whether it was Biden or Trump, they're just giving the Israelis what they need at the moment. So they'll be stocking up on these expensive air defense systems. And of course, we know that the Iranian missiles there were attempts to intercept them from Jordan, from other parts of the Persian Gulf and so on, before they even got to occupied Palestine. So there's a concerted effort. You know, the British and perhaps the French and the others are helping in this sort of air defense, but it's expensive and they need to stock up. And frankly, the US military industrial system is not that efficient at production these days. We saw what happened with Ukraine, that they weren't able to supply Kiev with the sort of weapons they wanted. Trump had some reluctance at first. Now it seems he's capitulated. He's gone back to the Biden line effectively on Ukraine. He's doing that there, but they can't produce as fast as Russia can produce there. And in the Iranian circumstances, I think that the Iranians they already had a very huge stockpile, because Iran was always expecting and worrying about the escalation of any war with the Israelis. They knew that they could deal with the Israelis, but the problem was, would the US and the rest of NATO join in the war? And then they had to prepare for effectively a war with the US, which is a much bigger deal for them. So they have a big stockpile of missiles, but I suspect they're addressing some of their gaps too in this time. People are talking about now maybe the second round. Israel will launch another aggression perhaps in September, late August or September, something like that, because it'll take them a while to stock up there.
That seems like madness.
Yeah.
And the reason why I say that, you know, when I used to talk to people before about this, I would say, but Israel knows it's going to get hit, correct? And they say, yes, they don't care. And it's like, how could they not care? And that's kind of the same thing with this. Iran was very restrained in the way it was going after Israel. And the people who I've talked to, they were Iranians. It was a very frustrating conversation, because from their point of view, they're like, well, we want to be moral in war. And it's like, dude, what are you talking about? They're hitting your hospitals. They're hitting police stations in order to free prisoners. They were trying to overthrow your government. This wasn't just rando war. This was a planned attempt at overthrowing the government of Iran. I guess you can say on the positive side, Israel expended a lot of the internal assets that they could have used to do this. And so those assets are probably off the table, at the very least many of them are. But on the negative side, you're dealing with a nuclear state. And so I suppose on some level you have to be restrained when you're going after them, because there's always a subjective level where Israel cries victim and say, well, now we need to employ nuclear weapons. Or do you think that's on the table? Like, meaning, how can I ask this? From my point of view, all notions of norms had been off the table with the genocide. And some people would say, well, nuclear weapons and the use of nuclear weapons will break a norm that the rest of the world wouldn't tolerate. And I would say, well, yeah, but they say that genocide wouldn't be something that the rest of the world would tolerate either. The rest of the world seem to have accommodated the fact that they're murdering people in mass pretty readily. Are nukes off the table in usage? What are your thoughts on that? I mean, is that a red line or is that not a red line?
Look, we've had this consensus, I suppose, that those with nukes in the past have been rational people in some way, and understood that there could be consequences, like a boxing match. You don't go into a ring and throw a punch expecting not to get hit yourself. You start a nuclear war, then there's a good chance you're going to get hit yourself, basically. And so you can give one, can you take one? That's the problem generally. But I think the other idea behind it, and this applies to the US as much as to Israel, is that it's an option that they might consider if they're losing badly, if they're losing very badly, rather than be annihilated. It's something they may resort to. The other side to that is, how can a nuke be any sort of deterrent unless other people think you're mad enough to use it, basically? And I think that's partly the diplomatic strategy the North Koreans had. You know, that the North Koreans, they're very smart people actually, but I think they cultivated this diplomatic approach, which is different to Iran, that be afraid of us because we're crazy and we'll do anything if you try and hurt us, basically. And the problem is that with Iran, and this is one reason why I don't think the Iranians would develop a nuclear weapon, they've told themselves and the rest of the world for more than 30 years, probably 40 years, that nuclear weapons are immoral because they're very indiscriminate. They're going to also, they'll kill a lot of collateral people. They don't want to attack. And then also they'll start if they get one, they'll start an arms race amongst these Persian Gulf monarchies and so on like that. So the problem is, the Iranians have been so moral in effect. No one is going to believe that they're going to use a nuke, even if they have one. I think that's the problem. How could it be a deterrent for Iran, who's told everyone for like 4 decades that it's immoral to use nukes? Okay, they change the fatwa and they say we'll do one because our state's at risk. But who's going to believe that they're going to use it? The Israelis had an idea. It was called the Samson option. About the idea that Samson pulls down the temple on his head and kills himself and everyone else, basically. But what we know is that the Israelis are not actually suicidal. They're very sensitive to being killed themselves. And this is why the Hezbollah and the Palestinian resistance have taken prisoners of war that they call hostages, because they know that the Israelis are very sensitive. And the only way that they've got prisoners released from the Israeli dungeons these days, and it's an apartheid system, there's no justice there, and a large part of the people are held without charge or trial. The only way they get people out in the past in Palestine and the Lebanese was to have a prisoner exchange, basically. That's why Hezbollah took prisoners of war, captured soldiers. That's probably why just recently Hamas was trying to capture some of these soldiers rather than just kill them, because they figure, well, we can get some of our comrades out of prison, basically. So the Israelis are not so crazy unless, of course, they're going to be annihilated. Either they're going to leave, they're going to flee like refugees, as they are now. There's a lot that have gone to Cyprus, apparently, but they can't get out by the airport. The airports are shut, the ports are shut, but there's some yachts going from the beaches, So they'll find some ways to escape. Are the elite who are going to stay to the end going to sacrifice themselves? I don't think so. Would they use nukes as a last resort? Apparently they're in submarines, they're in some other places. Of course, they're deeply embedded with the British military and perhaps the German military also, which is interesting because it means that the German military effectively has nukes, which people didn't really know about. But apparently from recent revelations, it seems like the Germans are also helping them with concealing nukes. So it's hard to say. We assume that maybe we were all wrong to assume that those with nukes were rational people, basically. This is the sad thing about it. We don't really know. But the US is the only regime that's used nukes in war and used it against civilian cities in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. So the US has shown itself to be ruthless. But that was at a time when the US had a monopoly on nuclear weapons.
Right.
We don't see. There was a suggestion that they might use them in the Korean War in the early 50s. But at that stage, I think the Soviet Union had nuclear weapons that maybe China didn't, So it's hard to say, really. Maybe we've all been wrong assuming that people are rational. And the Israelis, with what they've done, as you say, of course, genocide seems not to have been a red line to their sponsors, at least. We know that they're
I know it's a
sponsored.
hard question. It is a hard question. I mean, I guess for me, nukes are meant to be seen, not used. They're used as kind of like, hey, don't mess with me. I have nukes. And for Iran, I honestly think it is a dereliction of responsibility to the country for them not to have nukes, considering the neighborhood that they're in. But you're right. They take this weird point of view. Well, these are immoral weapons, and so we don't want to use these immoral weapons. It is like, dude, they are trying to take your head. Yeah, but we want to stay moral. It's not about morality. It's about the state. Like the state's first and foremost responsibility is to maintain the integrity of the state. This morality stuff that they keep leaning on is not a self-preservation mechanism in the way that I think they may think it is.
Well,
and I guess
they're certainly not going to use the first strike capability. If they had them, I suppose the one resort you might say was if they are hit themselves, because Iran is a big country and it's conceivable that it could absorb a nuclear strike on one other part and launch nukes from another part, basically. So retaliation, maybe there's some argument to be made that they have it up their sleeves in retaliation, whereas the Israeli territory is very small, very confined, basically. And that's in some ways why the infrastructure has been hit so relatively easily. And of course, also there's been all this collateral damage because all of their military facilities and intelligence facilities are in populated areas in the so-called green zone in Israel, basically. So of course there was damage to residential areas in so-called Israel, basically. But maybe there's some deterrence in Iran having a nuclear weapon so that it can retaliate if it is hit with a nuclear weapon, or alternatively, the way they talk about it in nuclear armed states is if they detect the launch of a nuclear weapon coming to them, they can retaliate in that form. But they are amongst the most prominent of the moral objectors, the conscientious objectors to nuclear weapons. And so it's not really a great deterrent to have one. They're not going to use it as a first strike there, basically. But maybe there's some argument that there could be a deterrent there. Up until now, they haven't changed that fatwa, but there's been some discussion, of course, because Iranian people are very frustrated, and they've been frustrated by what they see as the reticence or the weakness of some of their political leaders, particularly, I suppose, the more liberal government they have at the moment. What the Israeli attack on June the 13th did was bring the Iranian people together to say, no, we have to defend ourselves against these monsters, these Israelis. So there was a great deal of national unity there. I think the way it ended, the way Trump forced an end to it by unilaterally declaring a ceasefire when there was no agreement, was that the Iranians were proceeding on the assumption that they were relying on Article 51 of the UN Charter of Self-Defense to defend themselves against the Israelis. But there is not yet a strong, and I think this is actually a responsibility a lot of the rest of us have who support the Palestinian people, is to promote the idea that there is an international responsibility to dismantle this apartheid regime, because it's an apartheid regime that is the root of the genocide. I know a lot of people think the first priority is to stop the genocide that's a daily occurrence now in Gaza, but the problem is it's come from an apartheid regime. And if that apartheid, there's a responsibility for the international community to dismantle an apartheid regime. But at the moment, there is not a strong consensus to say all of these factions, even the resistance factions, are carrying out their operations to do that. But the Palestinian resistance has a very strong argument to say we are defending ourselves and our communities from these invaders, from these monsters. The Iranians are saying the same. But where is the political will internationally to say Yemen has it? Yemen is, but even Yemen is saying we will stop if the genocide in Gaza stops and aid gets into Gaza. So even Yemen has imposed some limits on what they're going to do. But really, what should be happening is a concerted effort to dismantle this regime, basically, because that's the root of the evil that's going on there.
Tim, I am so sick of hearing about international law. I don't believe it exists. I think we're in a jungle, and the only law there is your capability to defend yourself or not. And all of these other groups that are fighting as a resistance are trying to defend themselves in many respects. Like, meaning, when I hear this notion that, well, Iran was dependent upon Article 51, it's like, dude, no, you defend yourself. That's what you do.
Well,
one last thing on this.
what happened was they said, and I think the president said, Pezeshkian said that if the Israelis stop, we will stop. And that's what happened. And Trump saved the Israelis in that sense by
Yes, he did.
forcing them to stop and then, claiming victory or something like that. But it happened. The Iranians stopped after, and they didn't agree to a ceasefire. They just stopped the demolition of the Israelis, basically. So in a sense, Trump effectively made use of that. The Israelis were given a pause, basically, to rearm, to get their defense capacity back. Yeah.
Which is the question of why they stopped in the first place. Like
they said they would stop. If the Israelis stopped, they said they would stop. That's why I'm saying.
I know, but that's my point.
It doesn't get rid of the problem.
Exactly, because Israel is just going to rearm and do it again. Israel has never attended to a ceasefire.
This is why the Russians didn't agree, by the way, to a truce in Ukraine. They said, no, we want something that's going to last. We want a permanent solution there. We're not going to go back, letting them rearm as they did in 2015 and start all over again and attack the Russian people in southeast Ukraine, basically. So Russians didn't agree to that for that same reason. Unfortunately, the Russians are compromised when it comes to Israel.
What is the point of the secondary attacks if Israel launches again? I mean, obviously, they're going to get hit. Iran showed that they can get through their air defense. I mean, cut through it like butter. Hell, the United States knew that Iran was going to fire at the El Adud base, and Iran still hit their target. And so, I mean, how can I ask this? Does Israel really believe a country of 8 million versus a country that is 3 times the size of Iraq, that it is somehow going to win that? And I guess my question becomes, like, why do they think they're going to win that?
Well, they're relying on Big Brother to back them up, and they're jubilant that they incited Trump, whether they had an agreement before, I'm not sure, but they incited Trump to join in. And while outside observers might say, well, Trump saved their skin because, their fuel tank was showing close to empty on all of these assets that they had, they're thinking that they succeeded. Like there's 2 different ways to look at the first round here. Basically, the Iranians think they succeeded. The Israelis think they succeeded because they got Trump involved. They think that if they do it again and if it escalates further, Trump will get more deeply involved. They've always been paranoid, by the way, about betrayal by the US, but Netanyahu has been very crafty. He's been trying to present Trump as the great leader and going to Washington recently, probably preparing him for the next round and lining things up there. But so they think that the US is going to come in and save them again if things get worse.
Do you think that? Because Trump is weird on this. I mean, if you remember, Trump came out and said, all right, it's all done. Because he was using nuclear weapons as a stalking horse. I think Trump would have been perfectly fine overthrowing the government on the cheap. But when he realized my colony is being destroyed, they're taking a lot of damage. We need to get involved, and I'm going to use pretext of a nuclear bomb to do so. Well, Trump destroyed his pretext when he so definitively, beat it into the ground, yelled at reporters for even questioning whether or not there was any nuclear material left. He's like, it's all done. They're gone. We've destroyed it completely. It's been obliterated. We've used all of these bunker buster bombs back to back to back to back. Everything is gone. It's over with. We're done. And Israel was like, no, it's not. Meaning there was a dichotomy, which is funny to me.
He gave them a break, because they were running on empty, basically, and he gave them a break. So in that sense,
but how does the U.S. What is the justification for the U.S.? Meaning, you said, meaning the U.S. said, it's because of their nukes. Trump says we destroyed everything associated with their nukes. Everything is over with. We're done. Netanyahu, as you say, and I agree with you, is preparing for a second round. So how does the U.S. get involved for a second round when Donald Trump beat into the ground so hard that all of the nuclear material is gone? There was no way they could have moved it. It's done. It's over with. It's finished. But
Jamal, that the whole nuclear thing was always a pretext. It was really, it was nothing. It was a fiction, basically, because they know that Iran had other much more targeted assets that it could use and has used now against the Israelis, basically. So what they wanted always, what Netanyahu wanted always, what the US wanted always. And you remember this under George W. Bush, the same thing was going on. I remember at the time, Fidel Castro was very worried because he thought it was going to lead to a nuclear war. And he made some statements back at the time. That was about 2010 with George W. Bush. The whole idea has been to try and disempower Iran as an agent, as a player in that region, because Iran is the biggest, most powerful, most independent player, and the one that was helping the Palestinian resistance, and of course the resistance in Iraq and Lebanon and Syria when there was an independent Syria. So really the aim has always been to disempower Iran in some way, and nukes were just a pretext. Even with Obama, with the JCPOA 10 years ago, there was a little clause in there about missiles that could carry nuclear weapons. So we're trying to open up an argument in those negotiations to try and stop the Iranian missile program as well. And that's the one that really the Israelis suffered from recently, the fact that they developed very effective, very fast, virtually unstoppable missiles, basically, or at least even the Israelis admit, 14% of them were getting through. If that's what the Israelis admit, probably 40% of them were getting through, basically.
Yeah.
But that they want to disempower Iran. Nukes has just been a pretext, like it was a pretext with Libya, like it was a pretext with Iraq, basically, like the chemical weapons are a pretext in Syria. It's the same game they've played every time. It's a bit like, did you ever watch, what was that cartoon, Peanuts, where Lucy would hold the football for Charlie Brown and Charlie Brown would come and try and kick the football and Lucy would pull the football away and Charlie Brown fell on his ass, basically. So it's the same old trick, but Charlie Brown fell for it every time, basically, the weapons of mass destruction thing. It's just a pretext to try and disempower Iran. And they'll invent another pretext.
Tim, man, thank you for this. I really appreciate the great breakdown. Absolutely great breakdown. Tim Anderson, he is a writer, internationalist, academic, director of Center for Counter-Hegemonic Studies. Tim, fantastic breakdown. Thank you for this. I appreciate it.
See you again.
You have a good one. Be safe. Shout out to Tim. He joined me at the last minute, and so he has my deepest appreciation. That was a fantastic breakdown. Let me go to my next guest. Let me see if this works. And ready for you. And let's see this. And I guess I have to do this. Is that right? That is not right. Okay. I'm waiting on my guest, and I'm hoping he is going to join me. He was here for one moment, and then here he is. Okay. So let me go to him now. This share. And I think it's this. No, it's this one. This one. I'm sorry. It's a little bit complicated trying to figure out how to combine Hangout with StreamYard, but I think we got it. Okay. Efshin, can you hear me okay? Come on. Can you hear me? Ehsan Safarnejad. Can you hear me all right? I can't hear you. Come on, speak to me. Speak to me. Come on. I can't hear you. Come on, I know this works. Miranda and I use this all the time. Damn it! I know it works. Miranda and I use it all the time. Give us a moment. We're trying to work this out. Damn it, and I'm going to work it out. I used to be a software engineer. We used to have to debug stuff all the time. And I am going to figure out what is going on with us. Safarnejad is a fantastic guest. I've had him on before. I've had to use Google Hangout. We're using Google Hangout now. Okay. Ehsan, can you hear me?
Yes.
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 Yes. There you are. How you doing, my man? You doing okay?
As good as I can. If the technology allows me.
Look, man, it happens. That's okay. We proceed forward. I used to be a software engineer, and man, it used to be a pain in the ass having to debug stuff. I'm glad you're with me. You used to come on the show before. We ran into difficulty with the tech thing, and I couldn't figure out how to make it work. After some practice over time, I figured out that I could merge StreamYard and Hangout, and it works. And so thank you for joining me, man. I am so glad that you're with me. How do you feel today? You doing okay otherwise?
Yeah, thank you.
And let me make sure I get this name right. Ehsan Safarnejad?
Ehsan.
Ehsan Safarnejad.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why that is the case, but it seems that the English speakers, they do not pronounce the H of the E and before S or whatever. So call me Ehsan is okay. Like
okay, Ehsan. Okay. It's because we don't know, like the H is a little strange in our, lexicon in this sense. Like for example, my name Jamal, and when I'm in Muslim countries, they're like, "Why do you have an R in your name?" It's like my mom liked an R.
Yes.
It was like, "Why is that there?" No, man, I'm glad that you could join me. And just so the audience will know, he is Iranian-based journalist who shares an analysis on news geopolitics for Iran, Middle East, Russia, China, and the global South. I want to start off with a basic question that will be easy for you to answer, but will be very interesting for Western audience. Can you explain the relationship between the Ayatollah versus Pezeshkian? Because I am confused by it. Initially, I believe that the Ayatollah had control over pretty much anything dealing with military and anything, let's say, overall command of government. Meaning if the government needed to do something and he needs to say, look, this is where we're going to go, this is the direction, then his rule is primary. It's almost like a king. I'm learning that's not true, that the government does have a much larger role in these questions and decisions than I realized prior. Pezeshkian, I'm not going to say anything bad about him. I'm just going to say he has a perspective, or there is a perspective that he is very open to looking for a friend in the West in a way that the Ayatollah may think is naive. What is the relationship here? How does this work? Meaning, I know people go to the polls, I know they elect a leader, that leader takes over and forms a government. How does the government, however, engage and interact with, I don't know what you would call it, I guess the main leadership of the Ayatollah's aspect of government?
It's a very loaded question, actually. It goes back to how the separation of power works in Iran.
Yeah.
Look, as you know, separation of powers is a fundamental concept in a democracy, because if you elect a leader, you have a totally democratic election and a free one. And then you choose a person who then have all the power in that system. It opens its way to make himself to be a tyrant, right? So that's why separation of power is such an integral part of any democracy. The way that separation of power works in Iran is that you have a leader, you have a president, you have the Speaker of Parliament, and you have a head of the judiciary branch. So as opposed to United States, for example, other than the three main branches of government, the executive branch, the legislative branch, and the judiciary branch, you also have a leader. Now, I always find this analogy to be useful and helpful in making the American population understand what is the rationality behind Iranian system, because the leader is in charge of the military and the security of their nation. He's in charge of the long-term objectives of the Islamic Republic of Iran, and the president is in charge of the economy. And the judiciary and the legislative branch are pretty much the same as how it is in the United States. But the way that the analogy that I used to explain this to the Western population is by first explaining the bicameral system in the parliament of different countries. Like, for example, you guys have a Senate and also a House of Representatives.
Right.
In UK, they have House of Commons and the House of Lords, but pretty much the same, system. Here's the thing: every senator that is elected in the United States is elected for 6 years, unless he passes away or something. But the representatives, they are elected for 2 years.
Right.
Now, the rationale behind this is that you need two kind of officials. You need legislators that are longer in the holding their office for a longer time to think about longer objectives of the country, and then you have the representatives to think more in terms of immediately being responsive to the needs of the average Joe, right? That's the notion. So that's some kind of optimization between long-term objectives and the short-term objectives. In Iran, as I mentioned, the Iranian leader is in charge of protecting Iran and maintaining the security of the country. And we got really lucky. I was just explaining this to another YouTube host the other day, that we almost got lucky. And I don't think that the person who wrote the Iranian constitution, Beheshti, or James Madison, I don't think that he was actually this smart. I think that he got lucky, because if you look at every country in the Middle East, they have been destabilized. Why has it been the case that Iran has remained steadfast and strong, and it has maintained its sovereignty? Because you have the leader who is thinking about the long-term objectives. The presidents, they are very easily intrigued by believing the United States and not spending money on the military. I mean, we had a president, Mr. Hashemi Rafsanjani, who said that the future of the world is about dialogue, not about missiles.
Right.
Well, interestingly enough, those very same missiles that President Hashemi Rafsanjani, President Rouhani, President Khatami, even to some extent President Ahmadinejad, they sort of vilified that missile program. That was the very same thing that saved us during the 12 days war with Israel and United States. One other thing, because the leader is in power, in holding his office for a long time, I feel that it is necessary for me to explain about the checks and balances that exist in Iran so that he wouldn't go tyrannical. First of all, you have the assembly of experts who can, basically sort of impeach him and remove him from power, right? So you have that, and they are elected by the people, right? So the Iranian leader is elected in an indirect election. You first choose the members of the assembly of experts, and then they choose the leader. And if leader does not uphold its duties within the constitution, they're going to remove him. But apart from this, the Iranian president, as you mentioned, actually possesses powers that are not directly responsible to control and confine the Iranian military, but in indirect ways he can affect them. What am I talking about? The budget for the military is determined by the Office of Budget and Management. Well, who picks the head of the Office of Budget and Management? The Iranian president does.
Interesting.
So in that way, we have established a system that we have a strong military in the Middle East that is unfortunately plagued with weak countries that oftentimes become subservient to United States because they don't have a strong military. But at the same time, we refrain from turning that military into, a military-industrial complex, the like of which exists in the United States. So that's our checks and balance, and the way that we actually refrain from sort of maintain the power of the military. And in fact, if you look at the Iranian military budget and you divide it by the GDP, Iran actually has a very, very humble military budget.
Mm-hmm.
It's unbelievable how these guys have been able to create such a strong military with a very modest military budget. I mean, there's much to say. There's much more to explain, but I mean, for now, I think that suffices as the response to your question.
That is fantastic. Thank you for that. Because I didn't mean for the question to be loaded. It's just we don't know. And because we don't know, that's why, I just sit here and shut up and listen. Because I'm trying to understand the interplay and how it works, because my understanding of it was incorrect. Fantastic breakdown. Thank you for that. I'm glad you bring up the president. Why is it that, okay, let me explain it from the US perspective, from somebody sitting here. From my perspective, the United States is run by monsters. And those monsters went through and set the Middle East on fire with an explicit objective of reshaping the Middle East using American power. And that's what they did. So they destroyed Iraq. They destroyed Afghanistan. They destroyed Libya. They destroyed Syria. Sudan is a basket case. And they were always, going back for the last 20-something years, looking at Iran as one of the primary targets. And so from my point of view, it's like, okay, these people are monsters. You can't negotiate with these monsters because what they want, regardless of whether they use nuclear weapons as a pretext, they want to take down the government of Iran. They want to turn it into a failed state. That was my point of view. That was the point of view of many people who were in the US. But that didn't seem to be the point of view of Iran. Iran's point of view seemed to be, we can negotiate with monsters. And even though those monsters have blood dripping from their lips after taking down Syria and after Libya and all of this other stuff, we could still negotiate with these monsters at our door. And people like me were like, what is wrong with you? They are monsters. Like, is it like, what am I missing here? Did they just misunderstand the US's point of view? Did they misunderstand what the US was trying to accomplish? And they thought to themselves, well, this is about nukes. And so we'll go to 60% and we'll use the enrichment for negotiation purposes, missing the fact that it wasn't about the enrichment. It was about destroying the state. What am I missing?
Look, I do not have intentionometer. I cannot infer what people think, but the way that I see it, because I hold the same viewpoint as you, they are scared. I think that the only thing that you're missing is the fact that the United States has the most powerful military in the world. It has the largest air force in the world. It has the second largest air force in the world as well, in the form of United States Navy.
Yeah.
And you guys produce, I mean, from the engineering standpoint, not from the standpoint of the fact that these arms are used in order to kill innocent civilians. You have magnificent capabilities. The stealth bombers that you guys have, I oftentimes used to say that United States is the only country that has established a real triad of delivering nuclear warheads. The only country, if that was before China starting developing its own nuclear stealth bomber. It was prior to that. But you guys have B-2 bombers, magnificent technology, F-35s. Even to this day, despite the fact, and I know that many people will start calling me all kinds of names for saying these things, but you have to be realistic.
Yeah.
As much as I appreciate what China has done, but take a look at Sukhoi 57 or Sukhoi 75, China's J-20, you will see that they have borrowed concepts from what you guys have designed in the 2000 F-35.
Yeah.
That's a testament to the ingenuity of the American engineers. And then once you understand how powerful, without going into some exaggeration, the United States military, in terms of logistic, distributes 300,000 meals in a single day for its navies. That's remarkable logistic capabilities. Again, once you understand that power, well, you have two choices. Either you become Pezeshkian types of guys, and again, I don't know whether he actually believes that or whether he's just afraid, but you become afraid of the military might of United States. Either you go down that route, or you become a person like me and say, well, I know that United States is powerful, but we have seen the things that they have done. We have seen how they have betrayed Ukraine, how they have betrayed their allies in Vietnam, how they have betrayed virtually every partner that they had. They blew up the Nord Stream 2 pipeline. In fact, I was debating a girl, and I was trying to explain them why, like, the rationality behind my opposition to the United States and its policy. And I asked her, if we become Germany, a close ally to United States, would you then be happy? And she thought that I'm a moron for asking that question. She said, I don't care if we become Germany. I don't even want to become Germany. For us to become South Korea is enough. And I said, okay, so you don't believe that we could ever become Germany? And she was pleasantly nodding her head, yes, yes. And I said, well, they blew up the Nord Stream 2, Nord Stream 1 and Nord Stream 2 pipeline.
Yeah, damaged their economy.
No matter what you do, United States is going to get you. We go to that famous quote that to be United States' enemy might be dangerous, but to be its friend is fatal. There is nothing that you can do in order to convince the Americans, the American politicians. I'm not talking about the people. Just for the sake of our future conversation, anywhere that I mean the American people, I will explicitly mention that. I do not equate the actions of the American politicians with the American people. But what we were talking about, what you are missing is the fact that they're scared. They're scared, and they know that these negotiations, they will not reach any real or fruitful conclusion. But the fact that they have the defeatist mentality. They cannot perceive any other real way in which Iran could win, which is false. Let's remember that the radar in Al Udeid Air Base was attacked by Iran with a very, very spectacular kind of accuracy.
Yes.
We're talking about CEP, circular error probable, of a missile under 5 meters. That's a very astonishing achievement that the Iranian engineers in the Iranian missile program have been able to accomplish. But again, you cannot take the cowardice from these people. And oftentimes, now that we have reached this point, expect people to come into your comment section, or like even go to your Twitter channel and start calling me an armchair commander, because that's the position that you will find yourself. They oftentimes call people like me a hardliner. Why am I a hardliner? Because I want to see my country being independent, because I value Iranian technology, because I value the fact that Iran is an independent country and it should remain so, because I don't want my country to go through what the other countries have gone through.
Yes.
Because I take pride in the technologies and the power and the might of my country. Well, that gets you the label of being hardliner. So you're officially in the club. I want to welcome.
That's not being a hardliner. That's just being rational. And what I mean by that is everything that they have done have created the situation that they've tried to avoid. Meaning them wanting to negotiate, them being open to this sham and pretending as if this was about nukes was all done to try to avoid a war, and it has led directly to war. Like the appeasing thing just doesn't work with the United States. It just doesn't work. And so it's like, and Iran has shown deterrence in a real sense of the word, especially with the United States. As you brought out, the United States knew full well that Iran was firing missiles at the base. And Iran still hit their target. I mean, the US still couldn't stop them from hitting their targets. And even with all of the help of the US, France, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, knocking down Iranian missiles, they were still able to inflict severe damage on Israel. So, this idea that Iran doesn't have the capability of destroying Israel is nonsense. And for that matter, hitting US bases and hitting US ships, it does. And I suppose that the US knows that, regardless of what they say. So I agree with you. I don't think that's a hard line. I think it's rational, considering the appeasers still ended up getting attacked. So that.
Can I just comment?
Please
comment on one thing? You mentioned a very important thing. You said that the fact that the war has been brought to the Iranian borders and the Iranian territories, to the homeland, is a direct result of those policies, those appeasements, those concessions. Do you know when Syria was lost? Because most people wrongfully think that Syria collapsed in 2024. It didn't. It didn't. In order for you to understand when Syria was lost, you have to go back years to the time when Astana Agreement was actually signed between Iran, Russia, and Turkey. What's the story behind that, and why am I saying why am I making this sort of hefty claim? Well, the thing is that if you understand the history, back at the time, the former Iranian foreign minister, Mr. Hossein Amir Abdullahian, who passed away alongside the Iranian president in the helicopter crash, he was the deputy of the foreign minister of Iran in Arab countries, I think, if I remember, in African and Arab countries. Yeah, I mean, both of them. He has a diary. He has this book called, I mean, people have wrote it based on his diaries. It's called Sobh Damesh. Sobh Sham. The dawn at Damascus, the dawn of Damascus, something like that, in which he says that when the Astana Agreement was signed, the Iranian general, the Iranian national hero, General Qasem Soleimani, was furious. He was extremely against signing the Astana Agreement.
Yeah.
And he didn't want that to happen. But what happened in the Astana Agreement created a sort of safe haven in northern provinces of Syria, which gave the terrorists in that region the logistics, time, and resources necessary to recover from the very serious blows that were dealt to them by IRGC Quds force, spearheaded by the General Qasem Soleimani.
Yes.
So why am I saying this was an appeasement? There is a video of, by the way, in order to sign that agreement, Javad Zarif, former foreign minister of Iran, actually basically closed the Department of African and Arabic countries in the foreign ministry, and basically he didn't fire Hossein Amir Abdullahian, but he kind of set him aside. He was still an employee of the foreign ministry, but they took away his position. They closed down his department. They fired him in a way, but there is a video of Mr. Hassan Rouhani, the president of Iran, who says that Macron has called me. If you remember, this conversation was taking place during
Macron is called.
Yeah. Okay, so Hassan Rouhani during that time was trying to revive JCPOA because United States withdrew from JCPOA.
Right.
Pompeo proposed these 12 conditions, which meant basic capitulation. Within its provisions was Iran getting rid of its missile program, its nuclear program, basically everything, completely capitulate and surrender to the United States. This is a story being told by the Iranian president, Hassan Rouhani. He says that Macron has called me. Macron called me and said, I have talked to the Americans and I have told them that for you guys to demand that they get rid of both their missile program, regional influence, and the nuclear program is too much ambitious. Forget about the missile program. Let's only talk about the nuclear program and the regional influence. Hassan Rouhani continues by saying that after a while, he called me again. He said that I've convinced them to forget about the regional influence and just focus on Syria. Let's talk about Syria. And Hassan Rouhani at this point chuckles. He said, ha, 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 but we are even refusing to make concessions about Syria. We're even refusing to talk about our influence in Syria. At that point, the fate of the Syria was sealed. When Hassan Rouhani went on and basically signed the Astana Agreement with Turkey and Russia. They gave as I mentioned, the terrorists the safe haven that they needed in order to recover from the blows that were being dealt to them by the Iranian General Qasem Soleimani. So I want to go back to this sentence that I keep mentioning. You know, some interviews are actually shorter than yours.
Wait. I need to wait. You just said a lot there. I need to process that. All right. Are you telling me that part of the negotiations that were taking place, they effectively gave over Syria in order to come to those agreements? That the U.S., he wanted to get back to the JCPOA. Donald Trump was not going to go back to the JCPOA. Joe Biden didn't even go back to the JCPOA. And the U.S. wanted effectively missile programs. They wanted, obviously, quote unquote, nukes, as they would call it. But Iran, under Rouhani, said no to all of it, but was willing to give up Syria, even though they never went back to the JCPOA.
Here's the thing. First of all, saying Iran is too much of a generalization, right? Because in Iran, the leader is against making those concessions. Rouhani and his fraction, the reformist government in general, they're bad negotiators. They carry out their commitments within a deal before the Western side starts carrying out any of its commitments. And this has precedent. For example, in 2003, Iran started unilateral suspension of its activities in all of its nuclear facilities. And then the Europeans, the European Troika, Germany, France, and Britain, they were supposed to go and verify that Iran doesn't have a nuclear program. 6 months turned into 2 years, and they said, oh, you know what? United States doesn't allow us to have a trade with you because, and in 2013, we signed something called JPOA. If
Right.
you go and read the March report of the IAEA, March 2014 report of the IAEA about Iran's nuclear program, they say that Iran has taken some voluntary actions in order to show its goodwill to the West. And a part of it was, if you go and read the provisions, for example, Iran stopped enriching uranium more than 3.87%, which was one of the provisions of JCPOA. And it started limiting its use of more advanced centrifuges. These are the main provisions of JCPOA. When was the JCPOA signed? JCPOA was signed in 2015, 2 years before the actual signing of the JCPOA. the reformist government started implementing the commitments, the bulk of its commitments within JCPOA unilaterally. So I know where the confusion comes from. You think that, well, they didn't offer you anything tangible. You unilaterally did that. But I'm here to tell you that you shouldn't be surprised. It's actually very much in alignment with the kind of behavior and modus operandi that we witnessed from the reformist government. So, but just to answer your question, the core of your question, no one explicitly mentions that. And you have to connect the dots. But from the standpoint of seeing him giving that interview, the Iranian military general Qasem Soleimani being against that policy, the Iranian leader being against that policy, the majority of the principalist camp being against that policy, you understand what has happened, which is, unilateral commitment by Iran that it is not going to carry out the finishing blow to the terrorists that are now recognized by United States. Ahmad al-Shara, former Jolani, the leader of Al-Qaeda in Syria, is now removed from the U.S. terrorist list.
Yeah.
But Iran unfortunately didn't finish what needed to be finished because of the actions of Hassan Rouhani. Yeah.
That is amazing. I didn't know that, by the way. That is amazing. So he gave up Syria because he thought that it was going to give him better relationship with the West for doing so.
I think it's very tricky to know what Hassan Rouhani thinks because his actions are very suspicious. I'm not going to call anyone anything. Many people are very quick to call people traitors to the nation and things of that nature. I do not do that. And I don't really like doing that. But I'm going to tell you something. The coincidences that happen with Rouhani are very strange. For example, before Iraq, under Saddam's regime, invade Iran, before that happening, Hassan Rouhani was going to dismantle Artesh, which is the classic military of Iran. Iranian armed forces are made up of two branches, the IRGC and Artesh.
Okay.
And each of them have the divisions that the other militaries in the world have. They have an air force, ground force, naval force. You know how it goes.
Yeah.
Back during those days, IRGC was weak because it was just being formed. At that point in time, the main forces that were keeping Iran safe was the Iranian military. Hassan Rouhani was advocating for the Iranian military to be dismantled. I mean, not dismantled fully, but he was advocating for many of its top military commanders being executed, being killed.
Whoa.
So that's the strange thing. After that, maybe I should provide this context. It was after the revolution, and many people were suspecting that these military generals would have some sort of loyalty to the previous regime.
I see.
Regime.
Sure.
No. But I provided this context to be fair to Hassan Rouhani, but it was a stupid idea nonetheless. After that, a while ago, some years ago, he was advocating that IRGC's power should diminish. Now let's take a look at what happened during this 12-day war. The main forces that were carrying out retaliation against Israel
IRGC.
were the IRGC Aerospace Force, to be more precise. So, those coincidences are very strange, to say the least.
How is he overriding the Ayatollah? See, that's the part. That's where my confusion comes in, Because if you were in the US, the people would say, well, the Ayatollah is effectively a king. And as you pointed out, that's not true. That it's far more fluid than that. There are more checks and balances into this process. But it sounds like this was a choice made by the president and the president alone, and that the other elements of government were against doing this. I mean, after all, Syria was a shield on some respects. I mean, Syria was the step before getting to Iran. When Syria fell, it opened up the gateway in order to hit Iran. And so the fact that they were willing to sell it out or to give it over is pretty short-sighted, right? I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
No, you're absolutely right. What we are seeing happening, I can pinpoint what each of these developments that you have seen within the last year since the martyrdom of Shahid Raisi, former Iranian president.
Please.
I can tell you when was the starting point that resulted
Wait.
for example,
You said martyrdom. So you believe he was also assassinated?
No. Look. This is maybe in Shia ideology. You believe that if a person, for example, goes out of his home in order to make an honest living, if he dies within the process, he becomes a martyr.
Fair
So
enough.
like, but I mean, in the sense that that Shahid Raisi, President Raisi, was doing everything for people nonstop, it actually becomes even more relevant because, like, people don't understand. The people who were accompanying him oftentimes would collapse from exhaustion. Yeah, he was working that hard.
Yeah.
He didn't took any Friday off. Maybe I should explain this. In Iran, the weekend holidays are Thursday and Friday. In your countries, it's Saturday and Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
He never took a Friday or a Thursday off. He would go to remote areas in Iran and he would listen to the people, ordinary people who haven't even seen the mayor or the governor. He would go and talk to them. He would take notes and he would listen to them. He would take their letters. And even the journalist who would accompany him sometimes collapsed from like exhaustion. He went to Moscow, and when he came back, because there was a flood in Iran, if I remember correctly, it was the flood in Kerman, the province of Kerman.
Mm-hmm.
He straight up went to Kerman. I mean, this guy was relentless in terms of going and listening to people, you know, having like that kind of direct connection that you would want from a political leader.
Yeah.
So in that sense, we call him martyrdom of the servitude of people.
I see.
We call him Shahid Khidmat.
I see.
So that sense, there are things that are tricky and suspicious with regards to that helicopter crash. I am of the belief that people shouldn't use circumstantial evidences in order to, you know, issue a conviction, issue a sort of rule on something. That's where I come from. People have their opinion about that, anyway. But we were talking about the president's power, right?
Mm-hmm.
Here's the thing. Again, as I explained to you, and I mean, there is even much more to what we discussed. People oftentimes neglect the soft power and the sort of nuanced connections and relations that different politicians have with one another. This is a very crude analogy, but I was once advised by a very serious politician, never piss off your janitor. I said, why? I said, why? And he said, you have to understand, in Iran, the janitors also act as people who sort of bring people food, accommodate their needs. He said, that the next time that you are going to ask him for a tea, he's going to urinate in your tea. So I mean, in that sense, when you understand the subliminal and very nuanced relations that different people have with one another, you understand that when you talk about, for example, the president, you're not just talking about the president, you're talking about the party that is backing him. You're talking about his ministers as well. You're talking about people who have media empires behind them. You have people who, for example, some people in Iran don't know it, but there are these Telegram channels, these Instagram accounts that post jokes, daily jokes on the internet. And it's their job. 365 days a year, they post jokes.
Mm-hmm.
But suddenly, when it becomes when a political event happens, suddenly out of nowhere, they start posting jokes about different politicians. Where are they getting their funds from? They are being funded by those very same parties that we are talking about. So these are like the nuanced relations that we were talking about. They can mobilize forces. They can start calling for people to go to the streets and issue things, demand different things from the government. The Iranian president is the head of Supreme National Security Council in Iran. I repeat, he is the head of Supreme National Security Council in Iran. The Supreme National Security Council in Iran is responsible for making the decisions when big and influential geopolitical events happen.
I see.
So when you see a person like me talking about how, for example, the Iranian president had a hand in diminishing the extent to which the Iran was going to carry out Operation True Promise 2, for example, when I talk about that, many people are quick to say, well, the Ayatollah is responsible for the military.
Yes.
Very, very funny. It's very funny because people who are in the West, Kevin from Alabama says me that. He's trying to educate me about the political system in my own country. And this is unfortunately one final point in order to, I think this is a very crucial point to make.
Yes.
Unfortunately, the people who are pro-Iran in the United States, they have the same perspective about Iran and its political system that the anti-Iranians have. What do I mean by that? I'm saying that in that essence that when you talk to the anti-Iranians in the West, they frame Iran, they explain Iran as if it's a monolith, that the Iranian leader is in charge of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as it turns out, if you criticize the Iranian executive branch the way that I do, the very same pro-Iranians that were praising you before, they would also start calling you moron or all kinds of names in the book, because and the main argument is that, well, the Iranian leader does everything. It's the same mentality. Both of them think that Iran is a monolith. The anti-Iranians think that it's a bad dictatorship. The pro-Iranians, unfortunately, think that it's a good dictatorship. When the truth is that it's actually not a dictatorship. It's not a dictatorship. Once you understand that, once you go to and analyze, well, Iran has a judiciary branch. It has a legislative branch. The legislative branch passes certain legislations that the Iranian executive branch might not like, and vice versa. The Iranian leader says one thing, but he doesn't have the control over the economy. I'll give you an example. For example, during the 12-day war, the price of dollar went into 94,000 Iranian tuman.
Wow.
$1 equals to 94,000 Iranian tuman. You know what? Do you want to know something cool? During the time that I think it was Hammati was the Minister of Economy in Iran, the price, this was during the time of peace,
Mm-hmm.
prior to the invasion of Israel, Israel's invasion of Iran. The price of dollar went to 110,000 Iranian tuman.
During
100.
peace.
Yes, during the peace. During the peace, 110,000 Iranian tuman. During the war, 94,000 Iranian tuman. How is it that during the war, when the common consensus is that, well, the people will probably want to leave the country, so the demand for dollar would increase, and since Iran is sanctioned, dollar becomes like a commodity that is scarce. Right. So the value of dollar is not dictated by, those monetary calculations. It's defined by the emotions of people and the demand that they have. And a kind of a speculative bubble starts to emerge in that situation. How is it that the price of the Iranian rial, the Iranian tuman, was more valuable during the time of war than the time of peace? Solve that equation for me. I'll give you the example.
The only thing I can think of is the public rallied around the government.
I'll give you the explanation. The Iranian president, when the members of parliament were going to impeach the minister of economy, he went to the parliament to defend his minister. Mm-hmm. And he said, do not blame my minister. We wanted to negotiate, but, we can't. So some people, not me, please do not sue me in the court of law. Please do not wage lawfare against me. I'm being very careful with my words. So some people, crazy conspiracy theorists, they think that was an attempt by the Iranian government to exert pressure on the Iranian leader who previously said that negotiating with the United States is dishonorable, illogical, and not wise. And after that, after the whole thing, the whole episode of, the Iranian currency becoming so devaluated, suddenly, he changed his mind. I mean, who knows why? But I don't know. Maybe. I'm not saying that it was the case, but maybe the Iranian president going to the parliament and saying, we wanted to negotiate, but they didn't allow us, maybe that had something to do with it.
Okay. Iran is a complicated political system, and I'm glad you explained that, because you're very right that people who are pro-Iran would also act as if Ayatollah does everything. I will tell you, even in my videos, they would be like, why are you going after Pezeshkian? The Ayatollah is in charge of all of it. And it's like, dude, that is not true. It is obviously not true. Because the Ayatollah had one position, Pezeshkian had another. And these two things didn't meet. Okay. So going forward, what time do we have? I've been riveted by this interview, by the way. I've been just fascinated. I've learned so much in this hour. Just to close out, we have about 6 minutes left. Where do we go from here? I mean, it's clear that Israel is planning another attack. I would imagine Iran is preparing for that attack. But the government itself, at the very least the reformist government under Pezeshkian, seems to still be willing to negotiate, even though they've said, we were not going to negotiate until the United States promises us that Israel won't attack us, which is weird because it's like, why would you take anything that the US is saying, regardless of whether it gives you that promise? Meaning it seems that Netanyahu is preparing for another attack. What is going on direct in Iran itself, meaning the political space, what is being said, what is being done? Give us some context about the moves that Iran is making in this time frame.
Well, I just spent like a rather long time ranting about how Iran is nuanced and every branch of the government does its own thing within the Iranian constitution. So I can't go on and be monolithic myself.
No. Just to be clear, I understand that it's a divided government. And I guess what I'm asking is, let's say the government itself in the context of the presidential branch.
I explain. So the legislative branch has passed two legislations. One of them is about regulating the microaerial vehicles, the small drones. If you want to operate one of those things, you have to go to the police. You have to get a permit. Once you have a license, it's okay. You can do whatever you want. They have also, and by the way, if you do not do so, they have increased the sort of punishment that you would be subjected to because of the experience that we had during the war. People don't know this, but many of these air defense systems weren't actually being destroyed by the mysterious and significant superior Israeli air forces. No, unfortunately, they were destroyed by these small drones who were using the blind spot of the radars because they fly on such a low altitude, and they took out the Iranian air defense systems. Russia was subjugated to the same method of attack, if you remember, when they attacked, it's a strategic bomber. So the people who say that, Iran needs to go and purchase air defense systems from Russia, they're not entirely correct, because if they were, they could prevent that, they would do it for themselves. So just one thing, it's actually more complicated.
Yes, good point. Oh, good point. I'm sorry. Continue.
I'm not undermining the fact that the Russians have exemplary air defense systems, but it's more nuanced. People oftentimes just, I don't know, they make a very general statement. That's the first legislation. The second legislation is with regards to the use of Starlink. Again, you have to get a permit for that as well. Why are we doing this? Are we against freedom of information? No. Are we against the internet? No. The fact is that, again, a big portion of the Iranian air defense systems were also taken out by anti-tank missiles, from the ground. How did they do that? Well, they were controlling those anti-tank missiles, more specifically the Spike missile that is produced by Israel, through the internet remotely.
Right.
So that's also another initiative that is taken in order to make sure that the same thing wouldn't happen again. You can use your Starlink, you just have to get the permit for that.
Okay.
Because of the war. Another thing that Iran is doing is this sort of mass deportation of the immigrants.
I saw that.
It is oftentimes being, vilified and made out to be something nefarious. Those who know my position about immigration know that I'm not like an ultra right-wing super nationalist who says others are not deserving of living inside Iran. But you have to understand that unfortunately some of these immigrants had played a role in the attacks that Israel carried out on Iran.
Yes.
Moving the logistics, moving these sort of drones and things of that nature. Unfortunately, they had a role in that. I oftentimes use this as a frame of reference in order to give the people the understanding of what we are talking about. The population of Armenia is 3 million people. 2.9 to be more precise, based on a survey that was carried out in 2024, if I remember correctly. The population of the immigrants inside Iran is estimated to be anywhere between 6 to 8 million people. So 2 times, 3 times the population of an entire country.
Are you serious? Are you serious?
Yeah, that's why I'm so mad at the leftists when they do not see Iran, being so kind to the immigrants, and it wouldn't deport them, even the illegal immigrants, had it not been for the fact that we went through the war and this happened. That's why I'm, again, so mad at the leftists who don't see all the initiatives that Iran take in order to, be a good country, be a good player in the world, but they just blame Iran for like a subsumption of its problems.
Right.
So these are the things that the Iranian legislative branch and the Iranian police are doing. But what is the Iranian government doing? Almost nothing. Well, the WhatsApp, the messaging app by Meta, was unrestricted after the end of the 12-day war. And I'm against that, at least for now, because it is used in order to spy on Iranians.
Yes.
You could see the Venezuelan president Nicolas Maduro talking about that in his TV show. Apart from that, there are more things that you can say about the reformist government. And as fun as it is for me to bash the Iranian president, Mr. Pezeshkian, unfortunately, this is deeper than him. 186 university professors wrote a letter to the Iranian president saying that we need a significant and radical shift in the paradigm in which we govern Iran. What do they mean by that? Well, let's go through the provisions. One, you need to free and release the prisoners in Iran. Where have I seen that? Before the fall of the Afghan government in Afghanistan, when 17,000 Talib fighters were released due to United States deal with the Afghan government. Where else? In Syria, when 6% of the total prisoners of Syria were released, and then later on they played a role in the. To say that they played a role might be an understatement, but they did that. So literally everywhere that I have seen the regime change being unraveled and pursued, this is one of the playbooks that they use, the release of the prisoners. The second thing that they talked about is that we need to have more of a free and open and more of an open economy. Well, while I'm not opposed to free market, which I'm getting lambasted for by the leftists, while I'm not opposed to that, but no one can say that during the war, you have extraordinary circumstances that you have to deal with.
Right.
People will hoard. People will purchase more than they need. And some people do not do it because of the fact that they are concerned, they're worried about the war. No, they do it in order to gain profit,
Right.
to make absurd amount of profit. But unfortunately, now they are advocating for less scrutiny of the market. The other day, I went to the market.
Wait, Ehsan, I hate to interrupt you. I have to close because I have a guest that is coming up like now. I have to bring you back on to finish this conversation. I am riveted by this. You have educated me in a way that I don't think I have with any guests speaking about Iran. And you have my deepest appreciation for doing this. Please let me bring you back on for this. In fact, after this interview, I would try to schedule you again for next week if you're open for it. Thank you for
Take
this.
care of yourself.
Thank you for this, man. This has been fantastic. And like I said, I am deeply hopeful that you will join me again next week for this. I will hit you immediately after the show today. I'm sorry to interrupt you. I don't want my guests to linger for too long. But thank you for this. Honest to God, thank you for this. And just for the audience, we know Ehsan Safarnejad. He is a journalist who shares analysis on news, geopolitics in Iran, Middle East, Russia, China, Global South. We will have him back on, God willing, and him willing. We will definitely bring you back. Thank you for this, man. I really do appreciate it.
Thanks for inviting me to your show. Take care.
Thank you. Bye-bye. All right. This and this. Great guests. Great guests. And let me bring on another great guest. We are joined by Dennis Fritz, and I want to read all of this because your pedigree is just astonishing. Dennis Fritz is retired Command and Chief Master Sergeant of the United States Air Force. He was or let's say former director of the Eisenhower Media Network, with the mission to promote peace and diplomacy over war. While on active duty, he served as the principal senior advisor to 4-star commander at Pacific Air Forces and Air Force Space Command. He also held the additional duty as senior enlisted advisor to the commander of North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD. He's author of the book, Deadly Betrayal, The Truth About Why the United States Invaded Iraq. Chief Fritz, welcome to the show, man. How you doing today? You doing all right?
Hey, I'm doing well. Can you hear me okay?
I can hear you just fine. I'm sorry for the delay.
No, that was okay. That was okay. That was important. Listen, I just hope my lighting is not as well as usual because I'm in an alternate, undisclosed location.
You're fine.
And I think I'm on a different time zone at that. So
you are perfectly fine. Well, look, I'm in Malaysia, so I feel you in the different time. Yeah, I'm going to be here until basically September.
Well, I tell you, nothing stops your work then.
No, I am a digital nomad at this point. I pick up and go, and I bring my equipment and everything else, and just continue to do the show.
Okay.
Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate you joining me. I am curious on something. So we found out recently. Okay, I'm not going to show that video. That video is funny though. We found out recently that this base, Aludad, I believe it's pronounced.
Aludad, close. Okay.
Yeah, Aludad.
Right.
What is it? Oh, is
Aludad? Yeah, but
Lud. Thank you. In Qatar, it got hit. That it did get hit. So apparently, this was the installation. It was a communication component that was associated with the base. I think they call Radome. Is that what is it? Radome?
Okay, I'm not sure of that. But go ahead.
And satellite image shows that there's a hole where that was. Now, that is a hell of a precise hit. Now, Donald Trump, when initially talking about it, came back and said something to the effect of, Iran has officially responded to our obliteration of their nuclear facilities with this very weak response, which we expected and have very effectively countered. There's been 14 missiles, 13 were knocked down, one was, quote, set free, unquote, because it was headed to a non-threatening direction. Now, the problem with that statement is that it is not true. It seems that Iran threw up some ballistic missiles that was used purely almost as decoys with the real shot hitting its target. That is a hell of an accurate hit. That is a hell of an accurate hit. What does it say to you? And if you were, how can I say this? You were behind the scenes, and maybe not necessarily directly in the context of this, but you would have some insight into this. What does it say that the U.S. knew the shot was coming because Iran told them exactly where they were firing the missiles, and it still got through? Meaning our air defense, with all of the attention in the world, all of the knowing that it was coming, Iran still hit its target.
Well, Jamal, I'm not surprised, and let me just give you two reasons. One, I don't know if they used a ballistic missile, but their missiles and their rockets, they're very accurate. Yeah. So not surprised at that. In regards to us saying or denying or not recognizing that the base was hit, that's part of military strategy. You don't let the quote enemy know how badly you were damaged. Just like in Israel, for example, as we all now know that Israel, some of their infrastructure was really damaged, during the Iran attack on Israel. And so I'm not surprised at that. Also, even if some of the missiles were hit, you're going to have residue. You're going to have falling shrapnel. You're going to have some of the remnants of the missile itself that make contact, with buildings and so forth. So I'm not surprised at that. I'm not surprised at the denial. But at the same time, though, we do know that Iran did give notice, gave us time to prepare, likewise as they did when they hit Iraq during the revenge attack of Soleimani, their supreme military leader at the time. Uh-oh. Hold on just one second. Can you hear me? I think I lost contact. Okay.
No, I can hear you. I'm here.
Yes, okay, good. Like I'm in an alternate location. Don't know how well my internet is.
You're coming through loud and clear.
Okay, but no, I am not surprised. I'm not surprised at the denial. That's part of military strategy. You do a battle damage assessment, and then you don't reveal what was damaged, because you got to be prepared for the next attack. And so you don't want your so-called quote enemy to know how well and how accurate they were.
Yeah, I do get that. I mean, I do get that. And Israel has been doing that in the sense of not
absolutely
any knowledge. And by the way, I think they've been
the only one they acknowledged was the hospital. I don't know if we talked about that last time.
That's a sympathy. Yeah, that's exactly. A permanent victim. Exactly. And they didn't even hit the hospital. The hospital had blowback. I mean,
it goes back to what I said again. Yeah, residual damage. Collateral damage. It wasn't the target, but it was close in proximity. And once again, it tells you how powerful those ballistic missiles are.
When the U.S. military was because you were in the U.S. military at the time frame where they went into Iraq.
Yes.
And I've had John Kiriakou on the show where he was sitting in meetings and they were effectively saying, yeah, in a few weeks, we're going to be in Iran. And John was like, he said his boss cut the mic off, looked at him and said, what did he say? Did he say he was going to be in Iran? And the guy was like, yep. And he said, okay. And he turned back, cut the mic back on, and just sit there listening to Cheney give his spill.
Yeah. Let me correct one thing, though. As you said, I'm sorry if I interrupt your question, but
no, please.
No, it's all playing out. No, they were not going to be in Iran in a few weeks. They actually had a plan to be in Syria. I mean, real soon. And as you talk about the book I wrote, Deadly Betrayal, the truth about why we invaded Iraq, it was a plan. I think we've discussed this before, which upsets me, that General Wesley Clark knows about. He said years ago about the stuff. And let me share this if I didn't share it the last time, but most people don't know, which I won't reveal, because as you know, my book was redacted in some ways, but they didn't want to reveal certain information. There's 2 other countries that are on that list of 7 too, that I can't discuss. But I will tell you this though, Syria was going to be next. They were already planting the seed to go into Syria, but what prevented that was the insurgency in Iraq. They didn't predict that, almost like Israel didn't predict what was going to happen with Iran retaliating. But as part of the plan, Iran was always going to be last because of the fear of that they will fight back, and they had in their hands the ballistic missiles, which is why Trump at the time and a lot of neocons wanted, and which Trump eventually did, destroyed the JCPOA, the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, better known as the Iran nuclear deal, because they wanted the ballistic missiles included. And Iran was not going to do that, but that was their lifeline, as we all see now. But Syria was going to be next, and then Iran was eventually. They were on that list though, but as the last part of the plan.
What do you think the Pentagon is telling the president? And just to give context, Israel goes into a war believing that it's going to overthrow Iran. Mm-hmm. It does not overthrow Iran, and that does not overthrow Iran. It is taking damage at a level it has never taken. Its economy was coming apart. It was running out of air defense, and the amount of money that it was spending doing so was going off the rails. Mm-hmm. Donald Trump gets involved and bombs Iran. Trump had no idea how Iran was going to respond. Iran, still being moderate, said, look, we must respond to save face. And they did. And they hit one of the U.S. military air bases almost as a show of, we can hit these. Be aware, we may be giving you a warning, but we can do it. Mm-hmm. Everybody backs away. Mm-hmm. Netanyahu looks at that and thinks to himself, I can pull the U.S. into a conflict with Iran. Meaning, if I attack Iran again, I know the United States will get involved in order to save our bacon. And we will need it to save our bacon. But we are willing to take those hits for the U.S. to do so. What is the Pentagon telling the president of the United States, knowing full well that Iran does have the capability of hitting those ships and hitting those military bases?
Yeah. Let me just show you the job of the Pentagon, in particular, the Joint Chiefs of Staff, in particular, General Kane, Raising Kane, if you will, is to provide those risks, to the president. And I guarantee you, there's no question in my mind that they're providing those risks, and this is what could happen. And but then at the same time, because of the fact the president is the commander in chief, he has that authorization, so-called defend the nation. He can still move ahead, with his plans, to bomb, if you will. But I can guarantee you, no question in my mind, that the president provides the risk of what could happen, a risk assessment of what could happen in retaliation by Iran or any other country. So, yeah. So, I mean, in some ways, in a lot of ways, and I can't say in most cases, but generals are human beings too, and especially if they've been to war, they're reluctant, to go to war. They only want to do it as a last result. But then once the president makes a decision, as long as it's legal, quote quote, they find the legal mechanism. Because our wars have not been legal, but the judge advocates find loopholes to allow the president to go to war. And once that happens, unless they resign, the generals in the Pentagon, they're obligated to carry out the orders, of the president. But at the same time, they must provide the risk. Now, I must share this with you, too. I was not a fan of General Kane coming in as the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff. In fact, I was on record, very upset about that and how they removed General C.Q. Brown. But however, I must tell you, from everything I've observed now, and I've talked to others that are even closer, Jamal, he's doing a pretty good job. And so, so I'm pretty sure he's doing some great advising. And if you saw during their press conference after the big attack, he didn't get political, like, Hegseth did. And in fact, the Pentagon's not being political. That's the first time. Listen, I spent the majority of my military life in the Pentagon, and the press briefing that Hegseth did after our attack on Iran, that was the worst and the most political press conference out of the Pentagon I had ever seen. And I've been in and out of the Pentagon since 1979 up until 2022. And that was the worst press conference I've ever seen by a Secretary of Defense.
Ironically, though, it seems that the Trump administration was trying to destroy the pretext for another attack, if that makes sense. I know that sounds weird, but the Trump administration came out and said, it's been obliterated, it's over with, we've destroyed everything. It's done. Now, they're lying. Obviously, they're lying, right?
They call it disinformation. They have to do that. Yeah. And then everybody fell in line with the president, knowing that's not true. And that's the difference in this particular administration. He has loyalists. First time ever seen like this. Usually a Secretary of Defense or even a Secretary of State will be more tactful. They will not go against the president, but it will be more tactful. But they were in line and sync, as loyalists. And this is the first time we've seen that as well.
I know, but they beat it into the ground almost to try to make the case of saying, we don't need to do this. We can focus on something else. This is all over with. This is all done.
Well, Jamal, that goes back to what you said before, because of the fact of the threat that Iran brings. They're trying to end this because of the fact, as you said, that was a warning shot to our troops in the Middle East, when they attacked the Al Udeid base. That was a warning shot showing their capability. And they did warn us, like they did, as I mentioned, in Iraq. When they retaliated against for the killing or assassination of Soleimani, and so they warned the Iraqis because of the fact they want to show the capability. What people don't understand: Iran don't want no war. At the end, and that's part of religion too. But at the end, they could possibly lose, but they can put a lot of damage and a lot of killings. Go back to something I call it the debate that you and I had. You're really stuck on. I'm having fun now. You're really stuck on. Hey, they can hit one of those carriers, Chief. Fritz, come on, tell me. You know it, Chief. You know it. They can hit one of those carriers. Well, yeah, as I told you before, they can. And look, if as you mentioned my book, 4,500 military men and women were killed in the Iraq War over years. You follow me? If they do hit one of those carriers, you're talking about 5,000 personnel, including Marines, Navy, in one day. Can you imagine that? And so when you were talking about, hey, they're trying to end this. Yes, because of the fact, going back to what you said earlier, the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff and the staff itself, they're advising the president of those risks. And Trump doesn't want that on his history books, of allowing so many folks to be killed on his watch. So he doesn't want that, and they're trying to push back. Now, here's the problem, though. Bibi Netanyahu wants this war.
Yes.
And he's going to find a way. He keeps saying, "Oh, we will defend ourselves," and it goes back early again. You said, that hey, we could get drawn into this. This is not over. This was just a pause, if you will, because I don't want to use Trump's word. I'm not going to use obliterate, but Israel was getting. They didn't expect that. They were arguing among themselves too. And now, what makes me mad though is that they're talking about there's a break so they can replenish their defense systems and so forth. Guess what? That's costing us. We had this big beautiful bill that was passed, and what people don't know, we're sitting here arguing about Medicare and all that, but hidden in that, the Pentagon budget has doubled. We were already spending about $850 billion. It doubled in that bill, which that's what I do. And the people that I work with, the Eisenhower Media Network and others, we're looking at that budget that's not being talked about, that's doubled. And a lot of that money is going to go to Israel to help replenish, their stock. And that's unbelievable.
Yeah. Mark, once he pointed out, he says, don't mistake the bride for the mistress. And he was talking about Ukraine being the mistress and Israel being the bride.
Wow.
And
I like that analogy.
Yeah. It's true, right?
Yeah.
It's like,
wow.
Look, I'm not leaving my wife. I just want you to know that. Don't be calling my house. Don't be doing any of that stuff. You're the mistress. As long as we're on the same page, everything is good. And then the mistress inevitably calls the house. By the way, that happened to, I would say, a friend of mine. That happened to a friend of mine. Where he was, that's a whole different conversation.
No disclosure. No names disclosed.
Yeah, I'm not going to disclose anybody. I'm not going to out anybody. Yeah, but that's never good. That's never good. It's like, hello. It's like, yes, who are you? Are you the wife? It's like, oh God. You have to have a strong conversation. What the hell is wrong with you?
Well, that's what Zelensky is doing now.
Speaking of Zelensky. So it has been shown through The Guardian that we only have 25% of air defenses left. We have been given that many and that much to Ukraine and to Israel. Israel apparently burned through like 20 years worth in 12 days, which is just mind-blowing. And it gets across the numbers that we are making per year, how insufficient that they actually are. Russia is producing over 500 drones a day, and they have been using over 500 drones a day, every day for the last week, if not longer. And the attacks that have been taking place on Kiev are devastating. So just to show a few of these to the audience, just so the audience don't believe I'm just making this up. This is Kiev today burning because it was with several military strikes. Here are other examples of Kiev. This is terrifying. That's somebody cursing. Watch you get out their windows like, motherfucker. Like just bam, bam. That is terrifying.
Absolutely. Well,
and defenseless, completely defenseless.
Yeah, Jamal, I've been on record for over a year stating that Russia could destroy Ukraine at any time. And, they're showing, that they can do that. Not only when you were saying Russia is making, all these weapons, not only this, it shows you the capability of Iran. They're getting a lot of their drones from Iran too. Yeah. So that shows you their capability as well. And so at any time, I mean, there's weapons that Russia has not even used yet. And I must tell you, as I stated before in the past, they don't want to destroy, Ukraine, because like the famous word of General Powell, Secretary of State Powell, you break it, you own it. And, yes. and this is the disinformation that the West, and in particular the United States, gives. Oh, they're trying to control Ukraine. They want to take Ukraine. They want to start the barrage across Europe again. No, they don't want to own it. Oh, they're looking at their security interests. Hey, I do not want NATO next to us, risking our security, risking the time limit that an attack could be made by NATO from Ukraine. And likewise, if you've heard me state it before, we in the United States wouldn't want Russia weapon systems
New York Times is reporting that, well, and just so the audience will see this is just fantastic. And I don't mean it poorly, I just mean it in kind of a truth sort of way. This is a hit in Odessa. Mm-hmm. The missiles that were used to hit this location were paid for by Ukrainians. And apparently Russia signed it as it blew up a recruitment center, because Ukrainians have been given intel on recruitment centers for Russia to blow up. Ain't that something? Ain't that something?
Hey, I thought you were going to say, ain't that some S-H-I-T?
Oh, well, I mean, I could have, right? I mean, I'm pointing out, though, that the Ukrainians are on Telegram cheering the Russians on as they go and blow up recruitment centers all throughout Ukraine. That one just so happened to be in Odessa, and apparently the bomb was signed with something on it that I can't necessarily read in relation to the Ukrainians that paid for that bomb to blow up that recruitment center. That is astonishing. Well, and no, please.
No. I'm just going to mention, you mentioned Odessa, and it's almost like, the eastern part, Donbass region, all that area. I mean, Russia has supporters. I must tell you that, and that's the part that's just not, mentioned here in the West and so forth, and part of the disinformation campaign. So I'm not surprised at that either. But go ahead, I interrupted you.
No, you're fine. Donald Trump has decided to now rearm, meaning up to this point, there's been money and resources coming out of Joe Biden's previous administration. Mm-hmm. Now it is Trump who's taking this over. And apparently Trump has now realized that Putin doesn't care about him, doesn't care about his threats, doesn't care about the U.S. in this case, because from the Russian point of view, the U.S. has no cards. And so Trump is now taking over this notion of, I am now going to rearm Ukraine also, which brings you back into the position of Joe Biden. What is he going to do against 500 drones a day in this process? I am unclear on what Donald Trump believes he's going to do in this war. And yet he is now turned into Joe Biden.
Let me just say again, and you've heard me say this before in the past, Jamal, the term that we use quite a bit now that more people are becoming familiar with, neocons, neoconservatives, warmongers and so forth. Well, we tend in the past year, really since October the 7th, we're focusing on warmongers and neocons in support of Israel. But there's different factions of the neocons. The neocons first came out and they were former, Democrats who ran over to the Republican,
yes,
and because of the fact of Reagan's take on Russia and destroying, at the time, the Soviet Union. And so there are factions of the neocons, but their original goal was to take down the Soviet Union, which they were very successful in doing, and also getting rid of the Warsaw Pact, was the counterpart of NATO. Well, hold on. I think you said, yeah.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
In our minds, was successfully done because of the fact, the Soviet Union was disbanded. The Warsaw Pact was disbanded. And that would have worked. But where we messed up is the United States arrogance. I was in the military hearing, we won the Cold War. You ever heard all that term back in the day? We won the Cold War. We won the Cold War. We're the baddest thing on earth. That was the goal of the original neocons, to destroy Russia and be the superiority of the world. But then there's also a major faction for the Middle East too, and that's what we talk about more. Now, why am I telling you this? You've heard me say in the past, there are forces around Trump. It's those neocons. And also, so though we've been concentrating on the Middle East, in particular, Gaza and Lebanon, and then now Iran, but those forces also, their original goal was to weaken and take down Russia. And they are still alive and well embedded in Trump's administration. And Trump, he's going to try to defend himself. I'm the smartest guy in the world. I know everything that's going on. The big fight, as you already know, was all in the news about Hegseth made the decision. Then Trump confused everything. But no, nothing get by me. I know everything. But I don't know who made that decision. I don't know, but I would have known, if it happened, I would have known.
Clip, by the way, where they asked him, and they're like,
see how confused he looked. So
no, please, I'm sorry.
No, so my point is, when you're saying Trump, he doesn't know what he's doing, and then you got Hegseth doesn't know what he's doing, but you have these forces that know what they're doing, and they're pushing. And so they're pushing him. Okay, you got to support Ukraine. You got to support Ukraine. He comes out, but there's no answer for the drones. There's no answers for the weapon system that Russia has not used yet. If we push them into a corner, they will do that. And so, unfortunately, the commander-in-chief, the president, we all know we can't take what he says to be truthful. And so, he's being forced to provide those weapons because of the fact, as you said, Putin is a seasoned guy. He's been in this business, forever. Trump, I'm a businessman. He's not a Department of Defense guy. He's not a worldly guy. He knows maybe, corrupted business. That's been his success. But Putin is a seasoned guy. He knows what he's doing.
Chief, last question. Pushed by who? Forced by who? Everybody says that he's being forced. And I'm like,
well, not necessarily, let me just say this. Not necessarily being forced, but he's being undermined. And it's by the neocon circuit. I mean, there are warmongers within the movement. There's a movement within our country, and this is not conspiracy and our fact. I've seen it. I worked with these neocons. That's why I was able to write my book. I was embedded in the Pentagon. First time ever that they were all put in the Pentagon. I've read and know their plan. Here's
Trump could have walked. He could have walked. But Trump could have walked.
What do you mean walk?
Donald Trump got, and God, I'm sorry to keep you for a little. Just
go ahead.
John,
I got time. Go ahead.
Donald Trump came in on a ticket of saying Joe Biden got us into this war. Joe Biden got us into this war. Joe Biden is wasting all of this money on Zelensky. Every time Zelensky comes to Washington, he leaves with a bunch of money, with a bag of money and weapons. That's what he said. And he said it for years. And he gets in office. I'm going to end the war in 24 hours. I'm going to end the war in 24 hours. Meaning Donald Trump got in office on a mandate to end the war.
End the war. But he can't.
What? Yes, he can. He can walk. That's the part that gets me, where people are like, neocons are like, well, the neocons have surrounded Donald Trump. Donald Trump had a mandate to walk on this war, and he is now arming Ukraine.
Trump wants to be loved, okay? There are people, and they know how. I'll give you a classic example. Let's switch. We're going to come back to this. Let's switch and go back when I said the Israel-Iran war is not over. People know how to work to him. He wants to be loved, okay? Now, this may sound like opposites, 90 degrees difference, peace and war. Bibi Netanyahu, oh, Trump, the people love you. Here is my recommendation for you to get the Nobel Peace Prize. You know how much I love you. But listen how the 90 degrees.
Blood off of it.
Peace. But and I'm going to get you because you're going to love me now. You know I love you. But then in about 30 days, I'm going to have you in another war. But right now, I got you. Okay, now there are people, and unfortunately, Jamal, within the Democratic Party too, the neocons are embedded within the you got to remember Victoria Nuland. You remember that name? Nuland, I'm sorry. You remember that name? Okay, which part of the Biden administration at one time. In fact, they were looking at her to be the Secretary of State at one time. You follow? And she's a neocon, AEI, Enterprise Institute, the home of the neocons and the warmongers, and she was embedded in the Biden administration. Now, with that said, there are people, I don't know this, I think I can give you facts, opinions, and something. I'll give you a bunch. They're pulling Rubio. Hey, baby, you want to be the next president? Okay, you continue to take Trump stuff. But you're going to push him into supplying those arms to Ukraine. The whole goal, you say, who are these forces? There are neocon forces, neoconservative forces with a lot of money that wants to continue. Their sole goal is to, like I said, superiority by the United States of America so that they can control the war. The bottom line, this is about economics and money. That's the big picture. Economics and money of controlling the world for our oligarchs and their riches. And then I hate to throw economics in it, and where you continue to see the rich and the poor, it continues to grow in their difference. That's the bottom line.
We're going to have to end it on that. Thank you for this. Honestly,
Always an honor and a pleasure, even when we're both in alternate locations, different locations.
I know, right?
Yeah.
Dennis Fritz, he's retired Command Chief Master Sergeant. I love that. Command Chief Master Sergeant of the United States Armed Air Force. He's currently, or was, the director of the Eisenhower Media Network with the mission to promote peace and diplomacy over war. While on active duty, he served as a principal senior advisor to the 4-star commander at Pacific Air Force and Air Force Space Command. He also held additional duty as senior enlisted advisor to the commander of North American Aerospace Defense Command, NORAD. His book, or he's author of the book, Deadly Betrayal, The Truth About Why the United States Invaded Iraq. Thank you for this. You be safe, okay?
Likewise. Thanks for having me again. Take care.
All righty. All right. I see my man in the background. We are joined with the man himself, John Kiriakou.
Hey.
John Kiriakou is former CIA officer, author, speaker. His book, CIA Insider's Guide to the Iran Crisis and the Reluctant Spy, and also host of, what's the show? You have multiple shows, John.
Got two. One is called Deprogram with Ted Rawl and me, and the other is Deep Focus with John Kiriakou, both on YouTube.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for joining me, man. I really do
Thanks for
appreciate
having
it.
me.
I'm sorry for getting to you a little bit late. I'm running a little bit behind.
No worries.
Let's talk Epstein.
Mhm.
Let's talk Epstein. Well, two things first. I'm pretty sure you heard Chief Fritz. What is your take on that? I don't buy this idea that Donald Trump is being pushed on the issue of, maybe on the issue of Iran, maybe, just because his behavior is contradictory if he's not being pushed. I mean, there's no reason to beat it into the ground that you've destroyed the nuclear facilities when you was using that as your pretext to attack. If indeed you want to continue to attack. It's almost like you wanted to say, okay, I'm done with this. I'm out of this. I'm finished with this.
Yeah.
They took a shot. They failed. They didn't overthrow the government. There are no more nukes. We're good with this, et cetera. Now, of course, Netanyahu's not going to allow that. But it's contradictory if indeed what he wanted to do is continue it. But on the issue of Ukraine, he could have walked. His mandate was to walk. I don't care if Donald Trump surrounds himself with the devil himself. He had a mandate to walk. And now he is like, yeah, we're going to give him more weapons because Putin told me to F off.
I don't think he did have a mandate to walk, because
Are you serious?
Yeah. A mandate from the voters, you mean?
Yes.
No, because you figure this was a 50-50 election. The Democrats were solidly pro-Ukraine and the Republicans were split. So sure, there were more MAGA, non-intervention people than there were neocons, but altogether, not a chance. He didn't have a mandate.
Donald Trump, and just to be clear, when I'm saying mandate, I don't mean mandate in the context of he won by 20 million votes. I mean mandate in the sense that this was litigated, and he won that litigation on the issue of war. Every poll that came out that was talking about who do you trust more on the issue of Ukraine or on the issue of foreign policy, it came back Trump.
Yeah.
And Trump's main argument that he beat into the ground every time you put a mic in his face was, this is a wasteful war. It should have never happened. I'm getting out of the war. I'm getting out of the war. This is Joe Biden's war.
He was going to negotiate a deal. There was going to be a deal because remember, he's the deal maker. And then Putin told him to shove his deal, that Putin didn't want to stop this war. So no, I strongly actually disagree with you that there was no mandate to just get up and walk away. Nobody was proposing just getting up and walking away. It was sure you could walk away with honor, but Putin wasn't giving him the out for there to be honor.
Well, Trump was coming up with a stupid deal. I mean, like the notion that they were going to allow U.S. troops to be on the ground.
No, but that wasn't part of what Trump was proposing. He wasn't proposing U.S. troops. He threw it out there for a day, and it kind of went away. Nobody wanted U.S. troops to be in Ukraine. The idea was that the Russians would get the Donbass, and they would get to keep Crimea, and Ukraine would never join NATO, but there would be this fast track for the European Union. And everybody just assumed that the Russians were going to agree to that because that's essentially been what the war has been about. And
That's
then
not what the war's been
Putin
about.
says no.
I so disagree with that. I mean, like, there was no way that Russia, after it took all those 5 regions and it effectively said this is now part of the Russian constitution, and you would have to believe and trust that the U.S., which there's no reason to trust for the first of all of this notion of no NATO membership, and the European Union has become a militarized institution at this point, meaning why on earth would Russia ever accept that deal when they wouldn't even acknowledge that those regions were now part of the Russian Federation?
But then what you're advocating is endless war.
I'm advocating unconditional surrender at this point.
Yeah, that's never going to happen, ever, in any context. No.
I suppose we're going to find out.
Yeah.
Because the way it is and the way that it's going, the U.S. and Europe is not a trustworthy actor. And the idea that they're going to allow the balkanization of whatever is left of Ukraine and turn it into this kind of military installation where they can launch attacks back into Russia, they're never going to accept that.
No, of course not. But that's not what NATO is proposing. They're proposing defense guarantees, certainly, but not to use Ukraine as a base. That's unacceptable to the Russians, and they know it.
Yes, and they were going to continue to militarize Ukraine the entire way through.
What do you mean?
Meaning Russia's main issue, they weren't against negotiations. They even said, we are willing for a ceasefire if you stop giving them intelligence, stop giving them weapons, and you stop this kind of training for the military bases. They said, no, we're not doing it. They were very clear. We're not doing it. We're not accepting that term. And so it's not like Russia was being maximalist. Their thing was, we were willing to accept the ceasefire under these terms. J.D. Vance comes out and makes the point of saying, well, Russia believes it's winning and it's putting unreasonable demands. Okay, how is it an unreasonable demand that you stop rearming this entity that when we had a deal once before in regards to the Minsk agreements, you continue to rearm it and turn it into the largest military in this region?
The Ukrainians see that as a violation of their sovereignty. It shouldn't be up to some other power, outside power, to decide if they get to defend themselves.
Fair enough, but the United States wouldn't tolerate that situation either. We didn't tolerate and keep a missile crisis. I don't know why we think.
No, you're right. There's a double standard here, without any question. Yeah, but unconditional surrender never going to happen.
I suppose we're going to find out. Unfortunately, I suppose we're going to find out. I'm so sick of this war. You have no idea.
Yeah. Oh, you and me both. This has cost me a lot of money, this doggone war.
I guess all of us and a lot of everybody else who got fired from the network.
Yeah. We all lost our jobs at Sputnik, and I had a very profitable TV show at RT, and I lost that as well.
Yeah.
And the best health insurance I ever had in my life.
You know, of everything that I miss, it's the health insurance.
Yes, me too.
Because my channel has grown in a way that would have never happened if I kept the job. And so it's one loss, one win.
Sure.
You don't get health insurance, though.
No.
And the health insurance was free.
Tell me about it. Like, and this Obamacare is not all it's cracked up to be either.
No, it is not. It is not. Thank you for that. I appreciate the opposition. I need the opposition. It helps informs my point of view because I could be wrong. And, you know, it's like that. Me too. That tension is necessary to figure out where I am on this stuff. Let's talk Epstein.
Yeah.
Let's talk Epstein. What is going on with this? So it's apparently the last minute that people were missing because the prison thing is weird. They're like, here's 11 hours of video footage when we told you there was no video footage. And it's like, okay, dude, you said that the cameras were already damaged and now you're showing us something that you're telling us is video footage. Well, apparently people found the last minute that was being hidden from all of us on the Epstein footage. I'm going to play it here for the first time for anybody to see. Oh, what is this?
Oh my God. Oh my God. There he goes. Mossad, the Mossad Chevy. Oh my God. It should be so simple, right?
Right. We found the footage. We figured it out. Give me your take on this. I'm fascinated with your take on this because, Acosta, I showed the clip or the article before where Acosta pointed out, this is above my pay grade. Epstein is intelligence.
Right.
He said it very plainly and very clearly.
Could not have been any more clear. Yes.
Yep. Was he intelligence?
I have always maintained that I thought he was. Yeah. And I'll tell you, I'm of several minds, but let's talk about the intelligence connection first. I was on the Piers Morgan show, I don't know, month and a half ago.
Yeah.
And it was Scott Horton and I versus Alan Dershowitz and the former head of Mossad, I think it was Danny Ayalon, Danny something, not Danny Ayalon, but something like that. 80-year-old former 4-star general. And Alan Dershowitz barely let me get a word out. And when I said I believed, and I always couch my language very carefully, I said, I believe that Epstein was an Israeli Mossad access agent. And I'll explain what that is in a sec. But Dershowitz lost his shit when I said that.
Did he?
And started screaming at me that he was Epstein's lawyer. He knew Epstein for 20 years, that if Epstein had been an Israeli agent, he would have told him. And he says, and I would have gotten him a lighter sentence if he had gone public with that. And I said, lighter sentence if he admitted in public that he was committing espionage by trying to entrap former American presidents? You would have gotten him off? I would have wanted to see him hang from a tree. And then we ran out of time. So what is an Israeli access agent? Forgive me if I'm repeating myself.
No, please.
So every CIA officer, every intelligence officer in every service in the world wants to recruit the president or the prime minister of a foreign country. Never going to happen, right? So you do the next best thing. You recruit the guy next to the president or the prime minister. Mm-hmm. So if you are an Israeli Mossad agent, or you're the director of Mossad, and you want secret information from the likes of Bill Clinton, Bill Gates, Prince Andrew, Alan Dershowitz, and any other of the number of people who were on the Lolita Express or going to Epstein's Island, you're not going to recruit those people. Bill Clinton doesn't need your money. Bill Gates isn't going to take your measly $2,000 a month to give him classified information. So what you do is you find somebody who does have access to those people, somebody like Jeffrey Epstein, and you make sure that he has plenty of money, more than he could ever use. You make sure that he's got the private jet, that he's got the big house in the Caribbean, where every single room and bathroom was wired for video and audio. Then you bring in the underage girls to give them massages and God knows what else, was happening there. So that if you try and elicit some information from Bill Clinton or Prince Andrew, Bill Gates et al., and they don't want to give you the information, you have something to hang over their heads. And I'm going to add a story that I've told repeatedly, and again, forgive me if I'm repeating myself. When I was in operational training at the CIA, where they were actually teaching us how to recruit spies to steal secrets, one of my instructors told me that the best recruitment he ever had in his life was a copy machine repairman. And we laughed, and he said, no, hear me out. We all want to recruit the prime minister when we go overseas. None of us are going to recruit the prime minister. But the prime minister's got a copy machine in his office. And that copy machine is going to need servicing or cleaning. You recruit the repairman. So when he goes in to clean the prime minister's copy machine and he's dusting the drums, he's also installing a device that you've given him so that every time somebody makes a copy, it transmits a copy back to CIA headquarters. All of a sudden, you have access as if you are a secretary in the prime minister's office seeing literally everything that comes through that office. He said, I got a promotion, I got a medal, I got a photo op with the director of the CIA. It made my career. Copy machine repairman. Never underestimate a worker. Analyze their access.
Yeah.
Well, it's the same thing with Epstein. Like I say, Mossad's not going to recruit Bill Clinton, but they've got Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell that allows them to get all the information they want and to hold this compromat over the heads of every one of these important people. So I would bet money that he was working for Mossad. I feel very confident in that conclusion.
And effectively uses leverage over all of these various people, because we don't even know exactly what he was doing for a living. And some people have made the argument that he had leverage for a living. That's what he did for a living.
I think that's probably right. We don't know what he did for a living. He wasn't an expert in any way in investments or tax consulting. We've heard that recently too. He was probably involved in a homosexual relationship with Les Wexner, the billionaire founder of the Limited stores. We don't know. That's the accusation. And Les Wexner reportedly gave him hundreds of millions of dollars, to be his advisor in some way. He parlayed that somehow into something closer to $1 billion. He had the widest townhouse in Manhattan and the private jet and the house on the island in the Caribbean. He may have had the whole island. I don't remember anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, somebody was backing him. He didn't earn this money himself. No.
I want to get your take on something Dershowitz said. Alan Dershowitz, who apparently didn't take his socks off.
Yeah. So, he kept his underwear on. When the 86-year-old Dershowitz was being massaged by a 16-year-old girl, he kept his underwear on.
And has been arguing for lowering the age of consent, which is like, dude, you are gross. But he defending a pedophile. So there's that by itself, which everybody deserves defense, fair enough. But it is understood that as Epstein was apex pedophile. Listen to Dershowitz. Listen to what he has to say.
So let me tell you, I know for a fact documents are being suppressed. And they're being suppressed to protect individuals. I know the names of the individuals. I know why they're being suppressed. I know who's suppressing them. But I'm bound by confidentiality from a judge and cases, and I can't disclose what I know. But I hand to God, I know the names of people whose files are being suppressed in order to protect them. And that's wrong.
Well, if they're involved in a criminal act, there cannot be suppression. And no judge is going to say that Alan Dershowitz can't say who is suppressing. If the suppression, exactly. No judge is going to say, you can't say that the president ordered that these files not be released. No judge in America is going to say something like that. The president has no standing. That would be a criminal act. So I don't believe Dershowitz. I mean, he may know who's been implicated. He probably does know who's been implicated because Epstein told him, right? They're friends for 20 years and he was Epstein's lead attorney. So sure, he probably knows that. But to say that a judge ordered that he not reveal who ordered that the names be suppressed, that's not how the judicial system works.
He also would know the names. I mean, again, he would know who Epstein was in association with. He would know the Johns. He would know that stuff. Mm-hmm. And he just is not releasing that stuff.
Yeah. Right. You know what I would do? This is just me. I'm a whistleblower by nature, and I'm very willing to poke the hornet's nest. I've done it many times.
Yeah.
I would go public. If he's telling the truth and he has these names, hand to God, he says, blow the whistle. Go public and dare the judge to hold you in contempt. What's the worst possible thing that could happen? You get 30 days in the local lockup?
And his client is dead.
And your
So it's not
client's
like-
dead. Right. Your client's dead. I would blow the whistle and go public. He doesn't have the guts to do it.
Do you think that the main issue people can make the cases that Donald Trump is in those files. Epstein's brother has pointed out that he believes Donald Trump is in those files, but Epstein's brother is salty in general. So let's put him to the side for the moment. Do you think that what it boils down to is that it's the connection with intelligence that is the reason that the Trump administration is so against releasing this stuff and trying to bang this into the ground? That nothing to see here, folks. Everything is fine.
Probably, but it wouldn't account for the Biden administration's refusal to release any of these documents. So I think more than just a connection to the Israelis, we all assume that there's this connection to the Israelis. So what, it's going to embarrass the Israelis? Who cares? I think it's more likely that there really are movers and shakers, household names who had sex with underage girls. Mm-hmm.
Well, and you're saying, so what, it embarrasses Israelis. But
yeah,
what we're talking about, though, is grown men having sex with children.
That's
them
the issue.
And them using it as leverage.
Yes.
To compel behavior of various political figures.
That's right.
And entertainment figures. That's a
right.
hell of an embarrassment. Because that would mean that an intelligence agency had to knowingly observe grown people have sex with kids.
Yeah.
And to use it over the course of decades as a criminal enterprise that they've allowed to go through just for influence operations. That's a hell of a man.
Yeah. And let me add something too, because we're talking about major embarrassment here. When I was on this Piers Morgan thing, having the cage match with Dershowitz and this Israeli general.
Yeah.
Dershowitz said, Israel does not spy on the U.S. And I said, of course Israel spies on the U.S. And then Piers says, General, does Israel spy on the U.S.? And he goes, no, not since Jonathan Pollard. Jonathan Pollard was arrested in 1985, the year of the spy.
Yeah.
And Piers says, John, is that true? And I said, no, of course that's not true, with all due respect to the general. And in the meantime, Dershowitz is just screaming to try to drown me out. So I said, no, with all due respect to the general, 5 years after the arrest of Pollard, the FBI warned all CIA new hires, of which I was one, that there were 187 deep cover Israeli spies spread all over the United States, stealing our defense secrets. Of course, Israel spies on the United States. And then Piers says, General, and he just goes, oh.
So that was it.
Yeah, that was
the
it.
answer is obviously yes.
Yeah,
I mean, I don't even know
yes.
why that's even shocking.
Yeah,
I mean,
but it was as though I had offended. I had badmouthed Dershowitz's, mother. That's how he responded. He was just appalled.
Have you ever played the game Civilization?
Yeah, sure.
Even allies, meaning when I'm allied with somebody, I spy on them.
You have to. That's why, I gave an interview one time, Jamal. I gave an interview right after the Snowden revelations where the interviewer asked me for my reaction to the revelation that we were intercepting Angela Merkel's cell phone. Yeah. And I was just sitting there and I'm like,
of course.
So, well, she's an ally. And I said, of course. An ally that we are frequently at odds with over issues like trade, for example, or issues inside NATO. It's not that they're going to run some operation against Angela Merkel. It's that they want to know what the German position really is on these issues.
Yeah.
And I said, frankly, if I were the president and NSA was not intercepting Angela Merkel's cell phone, I'd fire the head of NSA.
Yeah. It's not his job.
I want NSA to be intercepting these communications. That's what we created NSA to do.
Yeah.
We can't be like, oh my God, we're spying on an ally. Oh my God. Come on, grow up.
The issue, I think, is because they have this idea that we're love and light.
Yeah.
And these are buddies.
Right.
And it's like, dude, that's not a buddy, that's a country.
Yeah.
They have interests. We have interests, and sometimes
There are no permanent friends, just permanent interests.
Yeah. Yeah. One last thing before I let you go. So, this case is very fascinating because this is one of the few times where it seems like the entirety of the American public said BS.
Yeah.
That nobody believes.
Jamaro, you saw the faces on Kash Patel and Dan Bongino when they made the announcement. They couldn't even look up. They had their heads down the whole time. And then finally they went like this, and Kash Patel said, he killed himself and there are no files.
It's like looking at a woman you had bad sex with in the morning.
Yeah.
You just can't look at each other. It's like,
exactly. And it's like, oh, come on.
So do you think anything is going to come of this? Like, meaning they're just going to look at it kind of like the Kennedy assassination.
You know what, man?
The public may think, but the public doesn't know. And the fact that they don't know is enough for us to just move on.
I'm very much like you in this respect, in that I want to believe that my government is doing the right thing and that it's all about truth and honor and dignity for the victims. No, none of that's going to happen.
No.
This thing, the administration is going to ensure that this thing just goes away. They're going to demand that the media move on to the next issue. And if there is no next issue, they'll create a next issue. But they want this thing to just go away. It's a shame.
So all of those victims, that man, that's amazing. I mean, they even went through with Prince Edward, apparently removing sanctions off of him. They're talking about pardoning Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah.
And, 2 or 3 years ago when all of this was happening, I kept saying, where are the Johns? Where are the Johns?
Yeah, seriously.
It's like you said, this guy was an apex predator. Where are the Johns?
Yeah.
And they would never come out with the Johns. And it's weird to me because this was going through state.
Yeah.
But meaning this was like Florida going after Epstein.
Yes.
It wasn't like, the federal government. But then somehow the federal government is involved. And it's like, okay, well, what happened to the case in Florida? Just vanished.
Yes. Yes. Wow. It just vanished. Yep.
Last word on this, John. Did I not ask something that I should know or that the audience should know on this?
No, you've hit it on the head. And the truth is, and this is what makes it difficult for people like you and me. The truth is that there's no easy answer, and we just don't know all the facts. Not only do we not know all the facts, we're probably not going to know all the facts. For example, yesterday I did a podcast with it was with Danny Jones, he's one of the big podcasters of the country.
Yeah. And
we were talking about the same issue. And I said, his hyoid bone was broken in the way that, blah, blah, blah. Yes. And he said, yeah, but Dr. Michael Bodden. And he said, Michael Bodden. Dr. Bodden said that he examined the hyoid bone and it was broken in 3 places, which indicated to him homicide.
Right.
Yeah. And I said, see, this is the thing, is we're never going to know the facts. They're not going to let us know the facts.
I think he was murdered, though. I never accepted the suicide thing.
Yeah.
I mean, it's too weird. Like, it's so, like, they put him in with this Herculean guy.
Yeah, they did. A serial killer, no less.
Yes, who had 4 bodies buried out in his backyard. From my understanding, Herculean had like a cell phone in his cell. Supposedly slept through him trying to commit suicide. And I'm like, wow, that's the quietest suicide in the history of suicide. It's like you are laying in bed and there's a guy trying to kill himself supposedly with sheets. And you're sleeping like a baby.
Yes.
And it's like, okay,
nuts.
Fair enough. Taglione never talks, never says a word.
No, never said a word. Never said a word.
Then the guards either were not there or went to sleep.
Yep.
They're supposed to be checking on him, every 30 minutes?
Every 8 minutes.
Oh, thank you. That's
in my prison, it was every 30 minutes. But he was maximum security suicide watch every 8 minutes.
So every 8 minutes, the cameras that were supposed to be looking at his cell, both of them were broken. They bring up apparently one camera that we are supposed to believe was watching the cell with 2 minutes or 1 minute and a half missing. Yeah. And they're like, yep, nothing to see here. And my thing is like, Okay, with all of these abnormalities, how do we know that somebody didn't kill him?
We don't. That's why we can speculate, but who knows?
You think they offed him?
I don't. I think he killed himself.
Do you?
I do.
Even with the bone thing, even with the medical examiner saying the bones were.
Yeah, because other medical examiners have said no. If he dropped himself rather than to push himself forward like that with the sheet around his neck, it would have resulted in the same kind of fractures.
Were you aware of anybody that tried to kill themselves in the exact same way like that? It seems outlandish.
Oh no, desperate people do desperate things in prison. Yeah. Yeah, especially when you're looking at 40 years.
Yeah, and to be a pedophile also, it's not going to be the easiest prison to send.
He's probably going to be beaten to death at some point for being a pedophile. And he's not going to, even if he survives that, he's not ever going to get out. I'd rather be dead.
John Kiriakou. I've heard, well, I'll just give you a thing. John Kiriakou, former CIA officer, author, speaker, his books, The CIA Insider's Guide to the Iran Crisis, The Reluctant Spy. You can find him on Twitter at John Kiriakou. Learn more about him at johnkiriakou.com. And you have two shows, Deprogrammed and
Deep Focus.
Deep Focus. Deep and D, both of those things. And Ted Rall is fantastic. So
he's great. Great friend.
John, thank you for this, man. I really appreciate it.
Thank you, Jamal. Good to see you, buddy.
Absolutely, man. You be safe. Have a good one. All right. We have had a fantastic show today. Fantastic show. We are nearly at 5,000 people watching. Even better. I appreciate all of you watching. Look, John is right. I go through phases in regards to television habits. And when my ex-wife, I went through this phase of, and I guess it's still ever so often, interrogations. I'm fascinated by interrogations. Cops, and let me say it this way, when the cops are the good guys, oh, I am fascinated by it. It's like when this guy's a murderer, this guy has just killed X number of people, and the cops bring him into the room, and it's all theatrical. But they don't know it's theatrical. You know it's theatrical because you've watched so many of them. Like after you watch thousands of them, you realize the cops are making this up. They're playing this guy. And everything that is taking place in that room is set up to get a confession. Because yes, they're going to take you to court, but they want the confession. And what you know as the viewer is there is nothing you can say to benefit you in that room. The only thing you can say to benefit you is get me a lawyer, nothing else. It doesn't matter if they're being nice to you. It doesn't matter if they're giving you food. It doesn't matter if they say, hey, would you like something to drink? Doesn't matter. The only words out of your mouth that can benefit you are, get me a lawyer. And the cops are going to say, okay, but we're going to take you to jail. I don't care. Get me a lawyer. Because the reality of it is that even if you're trying to prevent yourself from going to jail, you will most likely go to jail anyway. Meaning you need a lawyer. Everything in that room is planned and scripted in order to get you to confess. Now, if it is a murderer, it's still good watching. It's good. You know, this guy murdered 10 people in his family. All right, get his ass. This person murdered his wife or husband and is trying to get away with it. All right, get him. Great to watch. I cannot watch him when the person is innocent. I can't watch it. I can't watch it. It's because the cop is not looking at you as if you were innocent. And so it turns the cop into the bad guy immediately in that situation because it's like, oh, you motherfuckers. But most of the time when you're watching a person is guilty. John is right. That part of the ones that I used to end up watching were Chris Hansen. The Chris Hansen things was just mind-blowing. And they even have YouTubers who would entice pedophiles in order to get those pedophiles and effectively rake them over the coals. One guy started doing it because apparently his kid was molested or something like that, and he drove him to start doing this stuff. My ex-wife used to be like, why are you watching this? Why are you watching this? What is wrong with you watching this? It's like, dude, it's fascinating. It's fascinating. It's like real life stuff. My point is that's a lot of wood to chop. John is right. Pedophiles do not have an easy time in prison. And if you listen to some of the prison people who were in prison, who talked about their experiences in prison watching pedophiles, oh, it is harrowing. Fifth stage of hell. Like, it is one thing to be in prison as a murderer and people know you're a murderer and they're like, okay, that guy's a fucking murderer. It's another thing for the murderer to look down upon the pedophile and be like, I know I'm a murderer, but you're a pedophile. You're much lower than me. We can do whatever we want to you. And if somebody kills you, that's a badge of honor for the fact that somebody killed you. Nobody's going to deal with you in the yard. And, you know, you're fair game. It's hell. It's just prison as a hell. And this goes even below that. So yeah, it's like the bathroom of hell or something like that. The waste commode of hell. It's disgusting. Yeah, he would have had a difficult life. I'll put it that way. I still don't believe he killed himself. Somebody helped him commit suicide. Let's say it that way. Helped him commit suicide. Let's go to the chats real quick. Cherie became a YouTube member. Welcome to the family, Cherie. Welcome to the family. Dose Idrin, thank you. Bruce Moore. I don't know who Bruce Moore is, unless you're saying that's your name. Either way, thank you. Thank you. Madalax X. Jamal, why are we still talking about the JFK guy? Who's the JFK guy? Who's the JFK guy? Who's the JFK guy? Who are you talking about? I don't know who you're talking about, Madalax. And Manny Rose, Jamal, as a retired Army, scrutinized former CIA NSA. Manny Rose, Jamal is a retired Army, scrutinized former CIA NSA. I know some of you believe that there is no leaving the CIA. I accept that. Considering John was put in a cage for releasing secrets that we were torturing people, I give him credibility. I give him credibility. I like John. John has always been a nice guy, and he's always been nice to me. He's very affable. And whether I agree with him or disagree with him, I give him credence in regards to his point of view. So, yeah, I understand, though. Fair enough. And as you can see, we can disagree. We can disagree aggressively on that stuff. And it's still all right. It's still all right. All right, guys. I'm going to end this. John is not a psyop. Q, John is not a psyop. He's not a psyop. He's not a psyop. He's not a psyop. Epstein was a few years in a low security prison. Yes. Where he slept 1 to 2 a week. Yes. Don't need to be there. Only slept there. Yes. Yes. Because as Acosta said, Epstein is intel. Epstein is intel. Foment dissident. I appreciate your work. What's your least favorite trick? Oh God. I appreciate your work. What's your least favorite Trek recurring villain? Least favorite occurring villains. I didn't like the Kazons on Voyager. So I watched this podcast on YouTube, and they were talking about Janeway as being one of the most complicated captains on Voyager, for the Voyager thing. And I was like, maybe I didn't give Voyager a fair shot. Because of all of the Treks, I think I like between that and Enterprise the least. Rewatching Voyager, though, there are some standout episodes. I have to give it credit. The Q That Wanted to Die is a standout episode. The Doctor singing maestro. That's a standout episode, at least to me. I enjoy the doctor singing, especially when he was singing opera. I thought it was fantastic. Fucking listen to opera after hearing that. Someone watch over me episode. Would you tell her, please put on some speed? You know, someone watch over me. Some of those episodes were really stand out. The overall show, however, is not my cup of tea. When Blonde wanted to have sex with Tom, that was a standout episode. Because that one was, this is too much information, but fuck it. It's weird at the end of the show. B'Elanna, in that episode, got across, and actually Janeway is a really good actress. Like, she does an exceptional job acting, and I have to give her credit for it. But B'Elanna was able to communicate sexual attraction extraordinarily well. And it is a funny thing when she is trying to have sex with Tom, and Tom is like, no, I'm not going to take advantage of you. No, I'm not going to do that. And she's like losing her shit like, dude, are you kidding me? You accept any woman that throws herself at you. And right now I'm in medical distress. And I need to fuck you in this moment in order to get out of my medical distress. And you are blowing me off. That is the funniest thing in the world. And they're using it in this kind of euphemistic way all throughout the scene where she's like taking her top off. She's sweaty. She's clearly going after. And it's like, I can't imagine being a woman having to film that episode. They make it as if you just, I need it so bad in this moment. It's like, that's what you need to communicate as a Cleon. And then when he finally gives in, he is pushed away. He is not allowed to partake of B'Elanna. Eventually, they become a relationship, though. And that episode was kind of the pretext for them becoming a relationship. I don't know. It was a good episode. I enjoyed it. I guess what I'm saying, there's several standout episodes of Voyager. I was not a fan of Kazons, though. Not a fan of them in the least. Not a fan of them in the least. So that answers your question. Of all of the Trek series, them being a recurring villain was probably my least favorite. I'm trying to think. See, it's been a while since I went through the regular series. Deep Space Nine, I know like the back of my hand. Anybody who's political and into politics, when you watch Star Trek as a child, and then you watch it as an adult, when you've become more engaged in politics, oh, it's a different animal. It is a different animal. I would tell you, the episode with the Q wanting to die, how do we know that episode was real? Yeah, if everything that happened in the episode was driven by the Qs, almost as if it was set up to be that way. If you think about it, the idea of them going to Continuum, okay, that was pushed by the Qs. The idea of, meaning, if you take the very beginning of interaction between man and Q, that is a standout episode and one of the best episodes of the entire series. Picard has to represent humanity to God for all intents and purposes. And when Picard is confronted with this notion of, you people are fucking horrible. Why should we let you out into the cosmos? And Picard stand there as a man, arrogant as a man, because humanity has come so far. And they're showing him all of humanity's failings and effectively saying, you need to answer for all of the failings of man. And Picard is indignant by this. And even though he knows that they have absolute control of space, matter, and time, Picard doesn't care. From Picard's point of view, you're another alien being. Your ability to destroy me is not the same thing as you being God. You're just another being. So when he responds to this, it's not in a religious context, it's what sort of being are you? It's radical atheism, right? What sort of being are you? They tell him in that moment, we will be watching you and your test is not over. But that test wasn't just for Picard. The test was about humanity in general. And if you think of it in that context, in that way, that these are mischievous beings, and humanity in the face of these beings is little to nothing. And yet these beings find it, for some reason, of wanting to test and engage with humanity. Okay, so you have two Qs who now come onto the ship and they run a theater type thing with the notion of testing Janeway. Janeway thinks it's real. They engage it as if it's real. But one of the key points in that show was, all right, we're allowing a trial. Okay, well, this is ludicrous. Why would beings that control absolute control of space, matter, and time ever subject themselves to the whims of the human want in the case of a trial? And yet, they did. But if you notice in that episode, they come to Janeway and they say, hey, you're 70 years from home. And there is no guarantee that you would get there because of how far you need to go and what you need to go through. If you rule in this case our way, we will let you go to Earth. Now, that is a test. And it's very possible that the entirety of it was rigged for that explicit test of, will they be honorable? Have they gotten past selfishness? Have they gotten past duplicity? Have they gotten past, meaning they're judging Janeway by the rule book that humanity set in a radical situation where everything in her wants to get her crew back home, but she refuses to do it because of ethics. Oh, that's such a good episode. That's such a good episode. Pure foment dissident. I'm not going to linger on that shit, even though I know you want me to. Captain Janeway was an Army major in Remo Williams. No, she wasn't. Are you serious? Are you serious? I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Oh, I didn't know that. Or I didn't remember that. I remember Remo Williams. I remember that. I used to have a VHS of that. I did not know that. I did not know that. But Janeway has grown on me as a character in watching those episodes. But see, I like the captains in general, though. Archer, I didn't like. But the other captains, I liked. That's why I was so pissed off at the way they did, what is that one? That fake Trek. I don't even call it real Trek. Discovery, Disco. It sucked. It just sucked. There's one standout episode in Discovery for me, and it's not even with the main characters of Discovery. It's with Captain Pike, where Pike, and look, as you know, I'm enamored by ideas of self and self. What does it mean? What is it? Those type of things. There's an episode where Pike has to get the time crystal. Pike is told, well, first he touches it and he sees himself being blown to pieces. And he falls back, like literally falls back in panic, in infinite, absolute, radical panic. Panic at the degree that I felt when I thought I was being abducted. And Pike is told, if you take that crystal, that is your fate. You can't change it. It is immutable. It will come to pass. Flat fact. And Pike composes himself. And he says, I am a Starfleet officer. I am a Starfleet captain. Now, what's fascinating about this to me is that he's composing himself, but the way he's composing himself is as if him being a captain exceeds the fact that he's a man. Like, as a human being, Pike is terrified. He is freaking out. He is losing his shit. What he just saw, and not just saw, felt. himself was being blown to pieces. And yet, his conception of himself superseded the fact of him just being a man. And Pike says, I am a Starfleet officer, meaning I have a job to do. Regardless of this man shit, I have a job to do as a Starfleet officer. And he snaps the crystal. That is a great episode, or at the very least, that is a great scene. And the one who plays Pike does it fantastically. It's the idea, though, that, look, regardless of what we are, our self-conception of itself exceeds what we are. Now, that is ideology, yes. But as I've argued to you, ideology is all there is. It's all you get. No, I don't think this is a rejection of God in the way that it was told. But on some level, it is. I think people add God in this stuff because they want to add heft to it, because being a person is not enough. Fair enough. It feels diminutive. It feels small. By the same token, though, it is honestly, in flat fact terms, all you got. What is your objective? It's that. And what is your workable point of view to assist in that objective? That's all you got. There is nothing else. Life is weird because typically there is no objective short of the one that you give it. Now, people can give themselves their objective of family, of their wife, their husband, their spouse, their job, all of those things. You can make it an objective, but all things being equal, you're making it an objective. Now, other people will give it to God and say, God is my objective. Okay. Whatever floats your boat. But you are making that objective. They may pretend that something is being handed over, but that is them handing it over. It is still them orienting their life to something. You have a point of view, and you have a workable point of view, and that workable point of view is either to your betterment or detriment in accomplishing an objective. That's all life is. That's all you got. That has to be enough. Now, I get that when people know that, they get into the only question is suicide. It's like whether you should just say fuck it and call it quits. But it doesn't have to be that way. You choose. All right, I'm going to end this because we're now back into the thing. Look, the conversation with Dr. Zayman was very interesting. I enjoyed it. I love talking to the guy. I really enjoyed talking to the guy. Victor Brown, Jamal, there's a park there in Kuala Lumpur with spike walking paths that massage your feet as you walk. Is there? Look, you must understand, most of my day is spent looking at news, then going into sheer panic 3-4 hours before the show because I can never figure out what news to talk about. Meaning, if I was on any random show and they were talking about any random news, I would have known it because I've came across it. The issue that I run into with my show is, okay, what should I talk about? What is of interest to talk about? And oftentimes I don't know. And it's usually the pressure of having to finally say, okay, this is it, is the thing that ultimately seals it. Up to that point, I am completely bewildered as to what to do a show on, up until the point where I'm like, okay, I have to make a choice, gotta make a choice. For better or for worse, I didn't take this trip for a trip in the traditional, normal sense of the word. Like if I'm at the network, like John and I were talking about, and I would take a vacation, I wouldn't necessarily do work because I'm on vacation. That's not what this is. This was, I need to save money. Period. End of sentence. Mic drop. Lights out. Walking off stage. What it ended up being, though, was, yes, saving money, but also isolation. And isolation, not in a negative sense, but isolation in the sense of focusing on your job. It's just been that. So when I was in Albania, I would get the opportunity to go down and get coffee and watch kind of the surf and the thing. But even then, it was like you're booking guests, you're doing that type of stuff. Kuala Lumpur is a little bit different. When you're somewhere and you don't really know anybody, you're isolated. But if I'm being bluntly honest with you, I felt that way in DC. I didn't know anybody in DC. And so you're kind of like, whether you are in DC and don't know anybody, or whether you're in Kuala Lumpur and don't know anybody, or Albania, don't know anybody, or Indonesia, don't know anybody, all of those things are equal to me. They're the same. Whether you're 2 hours from home or 20 hours from home, again, those things to me are the same. What's the difference? And you can say distance, yeah, but you don't even experience the distance until you actually try to make your way back home. Wherever you are is where you are. It doesn't really matter to me. It all feels the same. People are pretty much the same anywhere you go. It's like, yeah, they speak a different language. Get used to that pretty quick. One different language sounds like another different language. What I mean by that is like, whether they're speaking, what the fuck do they speak in Albania? I can't even think of it. But whatever, whether they're speaking Hindi, whether they're speaking Malay, whether they're speaking Vietnamese, whether they're speaking Japanese, whether they're speaking, is there really a difference? It's like, yeah, they sound different, but you don't know what they're saying. It's like there's equality among that stuff. Not to mention Malaysia is very Americanized. Pretty much everybody speaks English here. So, all right, I am going to end this. Even every human feels distance between present location and his home. Yeah, but the distance is equal. That's what I'm saying. The distance is immaterial until it's traverse. So whether it's 2 hours, 20 hours, 25 hours, 28 hours, what does it matter? What does it matter? You have the capability of communicating through internet and through the telephone. And even if you're 2 hours away, you're not seeing the place. You're still communicating through telephone and internet. What's the difference? I guess what I'm saying, this is not felt. The isolation doesn't bother me. Malaysian food rocks. Charles G, I am very picky as an eater. I have cooked for the most part the entire time since I've been here. I have been trying to diversify my diet because for the first, 3 weeks, I ate tuna fish constantly. Just fucking ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. Humans miss home. I miss things, but not like that. You know what I miss? No bullshit. When I was with my ex, not my ex-wife, my last ex, we used to travel together. She lived in Austria, I lived in the States. And so when I used to go for vacation, I used to usually meet up with her and just wherever we're traveling to. For whatever her sins, our sins, to be fair, she was not suited for long distance relationships. And yes, I'm going to say that, I'm going to put that shit on her because it's true. However, in person, we clicked, and we clicked very well. And in the time frame, it was like you were like a little married couple. But that was because I was married for 10 years prior. And in my mind, any relationship just kind of ends up that way. I used to enjoy traveling with her. And some of the best times I had was during that travels with her. Before I met my wife, I used to travel solo. And then at the point where you get married for 10 years and you're traveling with somebody, you get used to traveling with somebody. And so it's a little bit weird when you are are back to solo and you're solo for like 4 or 5 months. But I did used to enjoy traveling with her. Kind of. I mean, anytime you're dealing with another person, you always have to subjugate your wants to some degree with theirs. If you're on the same page, no issue. Meaning if both of you are like, hey, let's do this. You fish in water. When you're not like that, then it is a pain in the ass. Because that was like, okay, what do you want to do? I don't want to do that. Okay. Well, I want to do this. Well, I don't want to do that. I give an example. So when the first time her and I met, and I'm like, all right, I'm planning a date. And my ex-wife and I always were on the same page. For travel, it's like, hey, you want to go here? Yes. It exists. Let's go. And so when you meet somebody new and you're like, okay, I'm going to plan all this stuff out, and you assume this is going to be the greatest date in the history of dates. It's all planned out. And you do your first thing, which is a gun range in Slovakia. A gun range in Slovakia. And in the gun range in Slovakia, they got all sorts of guns. Any type of military equipment that you can think of, they got. And I buy 2 things for us to go through the entire list of things. Sniper rifles, the works. Yes, I'm a guy. Fuck it, I'm a guy. I'm an American. And then she never held a gun before. Has like just a regular gun, not even like a big one, just a regular gun. She shoots it once. The thing says bang, just she's like, fuck it. She's like, I'm done. And me and the guy are looking at each other like, what the hell just happened? She nearly just dropped the gun and pulls away and runs away. And I'm like, what are you doing? I'm done. It's so violent. It's a gun. It's like, what are you talking about? It's a gun. Of course it's violent. That's the best part. It's like, all right, well, I'm going to enjoy myself. And I go through the entire collection of guns. And I am so pumped up in the white car back. But I'm also annoyed because I'm like, dude. And the entire date ended up being that way. It's like pulling teeth. The wild part about it is, despite the fact that it was pulling teeth, she enjoyed every last event with the exception of that. And later she was like, I probably should have did that. Went through some of the other guns. It was always pulling teeth, but I was always right. Every event that we ended up doing was like, oh, I don't want to do this. Until she actually did it, was like, oh, I enjoyed that. Until it got to the point of her just kind of acknowledging, okay, if he's going to plan something, I'm probably going to enjoy it, even though I'm going to bitch about it in the beginning. My point is, I used to enjoy traveling with her. We used to have a lot of fun when we used to go to the various events, whether it was Canada, Croatia, God, I mean, you can name it. And some of the best times that I've had was just small stuff, not even big stuff. It was like, I remember we were doing, I think, Croatia, and we had to drive, I think, to this waterfall or something like that. And it was like several hours of a drive. And we were in the car going with the radio blasting and me like singing at the height of my lungs. Now, I was not entirely serious, but it was fun. We ended up stopping at this cafe, and I remember getting a coffee for both of us. To me, that is fantastic. Like, I don't know. It's like small stuff. It's not even big stuff. There was another time where, I don't remember where we were, in Croatia, one of the other places. She knows I'm a big fan of Star Trek. And she buys a, race was big for her. Yes, she's Austrian. I don't know why. But race was big for her. It used to annoy the shit out of me because I'm like, dude, why are you focusing on this? But whatever. Her thing was like, she says, I got a surprise for you. I was like, okay. She goes into the bathroom. She comes out the bathroom and she's wearing Lieutenant Uhura's dress. You know, let me see if I can find the dress. Let me see if I can find her in that dress. Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Where is it? Here. Okay. I'm looking for a bigger thing. Let me, Lieutenant Horror. Star Trek. Because you remember in the original Trek, they used to use very soft lighting. Oh, this is a great example. They used to use very soft lighting when they used to deal with women in Trek. And women were women in original Trek. Like, look at the soft lights that they used to use on Lieutenant Horror and everything else. Look at the dress. Ain't that awesome? That's what they used to put women in on Star Trek, like in the future century. The military outfits that women wear are going to look basically mini skirts. She comes out the bathroom wearing a skirt like this. Yeah, that. She came out wearing that. And I was in love. I was in love. It's like, you got me, boo. You got me. It's like, you got me. No, I had a good time with her. We had a lot of fun. The things that I miss is that part. Because that is not, it is one thing, this solo travel. And again, I don't even know how that would fit in this context, just because most of the time I spend is working. Like, at the end of this video, I'm gonna have to go through and cut the videos for today. I'm gonna have to book the guests for next week because there's not enough time on this time zone to do that throughout the course of the day. So you kind of have to do it in advance. And so it's like most of your day is effectively doing that. Either you're studying content, you're trying to figure out what you want to use for content, you're either doing the show, you're cutting the videos. There's not really time to fit a person into that. It's just, you think. But that is the thing that I miss. Home is one thing, but no, she's not home for me. She's not home. She's not home. She's not home. No, that's too strong. That's too strong. That's too strong. What are those figurines behind you? Somebody was saying that I need to have something on the wall because the wall was too bare. So I ended up with that. What is this? I use reverse psychology on my wife when she gets upset and goes on, maybe I don't know, push me to stop. I tell the baby, you're turning me on. And she gets pissed off and laughs in great marriage. Navy vet, that is funny. Was it reverse psychology? Reverse psychology. No, she, we bumped heads. But see, that's the rub. That doesn't really work in the context of which I'm in now, though. I'm okay with that. I'm okay with that. Isolation. What is this? Live is balance. Get you a bujma. Karine, it is ironic that you said it considering you look so much like my ex-wife. Look, I played that game for the last several years when I was at the radio station. I'm okay. This is the time for work. I need to get shit done. I want to get 100,000 subscribers. I want to get my Google thing. That is my focus. Anything that deviates from that is adverse to my objectives. So, all right. I'm going to end this. Did you, Arlene Chambers? I dressed up as Lieutenant Uhura last year for a costume party. Did you? Which is like rocked it. Just like rocked it. Oh, that is so cool. You pretend and that is our business. I mean, do I pretend it's your business? I don't think I'm pretending. I'm just telling you. You can take it or leave it. Those cats took off their Mez Jazz Club. Cherie. All right, guys. I'm going to end this. You guys have a fantastic day. Jamal Thomas Morning Show signing off. I want to give a shout out to all of the people who came on today. Thank you very much for joining me. I want to give a shout out to everybody who's watching. We are still up to 4,272. We had a damn good show, damn good audience. I appreciate all of you for joining. And you all have a fantastic, what would you say, just getting here just in time for us to leave. Maybe that sounds like a great marriage. Thanks for sharing. Well, that wasn't my marriage. That was my ex-girlfriend. The marriage was more complicated. The marriage was far more complicated. In fact, both relationships were complicated, but for different reasons. Yeah, for very different reasons. Like it's so wild. Most of my relationships were people who were similar to me. They were very left brain, very professional, very career oriented. Especially my ex-wife. Her and I were on the same page, especially around the issue of travel. It's like both of us had Venus and Leo. And so I'm saying that to say our tastes were in alignment. If she wanted to buy me something clothing-wise, she knew me in a heartbeat, and vice versa. And if it was going to travel or something like that, same page. Same page. Hey, let's travel around the world. Hey, fuck it, let's do it. Same page. No issue on that front. But I realize that you need it's not really enough. It depends on the person. It's not really enough. I'm complicated. So I have a tendency to want contradictory things, which you can imagine is that just fucking doesn't work. To give an example, I decided in a heartbeat, I enjoy traveling. I don't like to be held down. And I like to have the ability to go when I have the opportunity to go, which is the reason why my company used to send me all those places to cover events. Because for me, it's like, hey, I'll do it. I'll do it. I've always wanted to leave the States for a long period of time, but it was impossible to do when I was at the radio station. And in fact, when the radio station went belly up, I just assumed I would never travel again. I'm going to be broke. I'm just going to have to accept it. And ironically, the opportunity came up because it was cheaper to leave than to stay. All right, fair enough. But then you say, you know what? What if I just keep doing this? I can save cash, focus on my job. Win-win. But then I would simultaneously, as we were talking about that, say, you know, I really do miss so-and-so. Okay, well, these things are contradictory. It is impossible to bring a person into that context. And, you know, when I was married, or before I even married my wife, that was an issue. The people who have known me when I first started my channel, they know that I would be up at 2 a.m, 3 a.m, 4 a.m, any time of day, I would do a show. And in trying to grow the show, they used to say that the show was the other woman because I used to spend so much time doing content. Now, that is how it looks externally. If you're looking internally and you are a wife and you're like, dude, are you again? Now, especially when you're starting off and you don't have little of anything, and your wife is like, or your girlfriend at the time, she's looking at you like a 40-year-old rapper. Whereas from your point of view, it's like, I'm doing a show. Now, when that show grows and it gets 10,000, 20,000, 30,000, it's like, okay, now we're talking about something real. But it's still this idea of the other woman, meaning it is a difficult thing for a person who wants independence to do what they do, whatever that is. Whether that's I'm picking up and leaving and traveling the world. And despite the fact that I'm traveling the world, I am working most of the time and during the day, while simultaneously saying, yeah, it was also nice having fun with this other person. Okay, these things are contradictory to one another. That contradiction is very difficult to mend, if it's difficult to mend at all. It worked for 10 years in the context of the marriage, but it requires sacrifice. And it's like the sacrifice that you're effectively making is your independence. And you can imagine that becomes a bit much if you continuously have to sacrifice your independence to make something work. It makes you, bitchy. Because when you're dealing with somebody else, you're always dealing with their expectations, their goals also. And either you have same pageness or you don't have same pageness. And if you don't have same pageness, then one person has to give something up. And if you are one of those people who want independence by the same token wanting closeness, how does that work? How does that work? If you have an answer why that works, you can put it in the comments because I damn sure don't know. All right, I am going to end this. I'm going to end this. Oh, wait, there's one more. Auntie Ann, don't forget to call that awesome guest right after you end. Can't wait to listen to another interview. Auntie Ann, I sent him a text message during the show. Hopefully, Epstein is not pissed off at me. I didn't mean to cut him off. I didn't have a choice but to cut him off because we're going into the next guest. I did point out that we have 7 minutes remaining. And he did get an hour to explain. The hour wasn't enough. And I was being sincere when I told him I really want him back. I sent him a text immediately. Immediately. I didn't even wait till the show ended. And asked him to come back on either Monday or Tuesday. Hopefully Monday, because I think the 7 o'clock hour is open on Monday. Patrick Henningsen is going to be on Tuesday, by the way. He's always a really good guest. So, Auntie, yes. I hit him up immediately. Hopefully he's not pissed off at me. And hopefully he says yes. Hopefully he says yes. Who is Jackie Mom Mabley? I have no idea. I have no idea. You're not an independent when you're married. No, you're not. Sarah Shepard, which is... No, you're not. You're just not. Even when you're traveling with the person, you have to meld your wants with theirs. Yeah, it's complicated. It was always complicated. And it was complicated in a way where you felt like you were being judged, whether you're being judged or not. Like, if I do a show, then fair enough, I accept audience, point of view, criticism, whatever. I either accept it or I don't. 90% of it is nonsense. But there is a 10% that actually is helpful. But you don't, if you're playing chess, then you're being judged just by definition of win or lose. And you yourself as a person, if you're honest, can make that assessment. But you don't want to get that shit 24 hours a day, if that makes sense. And if there's that same pageness, then there's judgment by definition, right? It's, this person wants X. You don't really want X, but you may have to give some of X because you're in association with this other person. Yeah, it's just, yeah. I think I was a bad husband, at least in the last, that's not true. That's not true. That's not true. I was bad when I got sick. In the last several years, I was a bad husband. But that's because I was mostly ill. All right. I'm going to say like. I'm going to say share. I'm going to say subscribe. What is this? Deborah Hamilton. Arnold Bertrand on Substack has a good thing on France's proposal to realign with China instead of the United States is really good. I'll believe it when I see it. I'll believe it when I see it. Europe are a captured vassal of the United States. They may feel some kind of way that Trump is talking about sanctions. They may feel some kind of way that Trump is in charge right now. But if you got some rando Democrat that took over, they'd come running. Oh, thank God, Daddy's back. And they would suckle at the tit like nobody's business. Joe Biden's like, you can take it, take it. And they will suckle Joe Biden's tit like nobody's business. So I am skeptical of that, but who knows? Who knows? Who knows? Damn, Candace Owens, look what you've done. What does that mean? What does that mean? What does that mean? All right, I'm going to end this. I'm going to say like, I'm going to say share, I'm going to say subscribe. You guys have a fantastic day, and I will see you bright and early Monday morning, providing nothing takes place over the weekend. Have a good one all. And by the way, all of you that contribute, thank you. Most of these shows, many of these shows are demonetized. And as they are demonetized, you guys effectively help the content. You can do so through PayPal, Patreon, Buy Me a Coffee, memberships, super chats, all of those things help. Liking the content, sharing it, all of those things help. And I deeply appreciate all of you for doing so. We had a damn good show today. We had a damn good crowd. That's why I'm just kind of hanging out, talking. Enjoy the rest of your day. Be safe. Be kind to the degree that you can be kind. Have a good one all.